morning, everyone. I just have to fix this. Okay. So I'm Nawal Ammar. I'm the Dean of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, and I'm happy in the Q&A tell everybody why we are interested in artificial intelligence. But I'm here to actually introduce our amazing president. But before I do that, I'd like to recognize some people in the audience. State Senator Andrew Zwicker, Labor Commissioner Robert Asaro Angelo. Are you all here? Right there, okay. Dave Cole, New Jersey Chief Innovation Officer, who will be speaking later on, and Tim Sullivan, CEO of the Economic Development Authority, whom I've introduced a few times. I want to start with an introduction to Dr. Hushman, so be patient with me, because this is something that I've been wanting to do and haven't done. Every time I introduce him, I don't do him any justice. So Dr. Ali Hushman stepped into the presidency of Rowan University in 2012 after devoting 6 impactful years as provost, senior vice president, CEO, and interim president. He is a leader of exceptional vision and heart. Dr. Hushman has become a deeply respected and admired figure, known for his authentic connections with students, faculty, alumni, policymakers, industry leaders, and the broader community. A tireless advocate for the transformative power of education. Dr. Hushman holds a bachelor's in mathematics, a master's in mathematical statistics, and both master's and doctoral degrees in industrial and operations engineering. An inspiring blend of academic rigor and entrepreneurial spirit drives his leadership. He champions access, excellence, affordability, and economic impact as pillars of modern education. Under his bold and compassionate guidance, Rowan has undergone a remarkable transformation from a reputable state institution to a Carnegie Classified R2 and soon a Carnegie Classified R1. With 2 thriving medical schools and New Jersey's first veterinary school soon to open, Dr. Hushman's legacy continues to shape a brighter, more accessible future for countless students and the communities they serve. Dr. Hushman's forward-thinking vision extends into the rapidly evolving world of artificial intelligence, where he sees immense potential to reshape education, research, and the student experience. He believes AI, if I may speak on his behalf, and he can correct me, can be a powerful equalizer, unlocking new pathways to learning, streamlining operations, and enhancing decision-making across the university. With characteristic foresight, Dr. Hushman has embraced AI. I have heard him emphasize responsible use of several occasions, ensuring that AI serves the greater good. I have also heard him several times noting that integrating AI thoughtfully into higher education and all other aspects of life and work is not just a trend, but a crucial step preparing students for the challenges and opportunities of tomorrow's world. It is my pleasure to introduce our amazing president, Dr. Ali Hushman.
Good morning, everyone. For the first time, I thought that I'm running for an office and somebody's introducing my credentials. I didn't expect this thing. Welcome to this great conference. It's really, it's like a perfect storm for college presidents these days. You have artificial intelligence coming at you. You have the new administration. And you have this whole demographic cliff where there are fewer 17, 18-year-olds going to college. And we are supposed to make sure that we do more with less during this environment. It's really challenging, but I think it's also exciting. The changes that you're going to see in all aspects of what we do is going to be just absolutely amazing. And frankly, for presidents, frightening. Let me give you one example. We are about to spend, let's say, $250 million in building academic buildings that are going to be functioning and useful 50 years from now. And I have no idea how it should look like. But I do know that there are not going to be a bunch of offices and conference rooms and kitchens and bathrooms. And how it is, I have no idea. And I need help from experts like you to do that. And the changes that we are going to face not only are going to be very positive in terms of the impact on the services we provide to the students, whether it's advising, mentorship, guidance to a degree, and actually being an expert in AI. But the challenges are that who is the sage on the stage now? Who is a professor and who is a student? When everybody has access to all the knowledge that is available to everyone, where do you think your grandchildren are going to go to school and what are they going to learn? Is there still going to be a sage on the stage come in and with 30 or 40 students and he or she writes on the wall, on the board, and people copy and do tests and get a degree called Bachelor of whatever? And if it's not, what is it going to be? So that role of changing sage on the stage into guide on the side is the greatest challenge and transformation for higher education, in my opinion. How do we get to appreciate that, yes, AI can be challenging, but at the same time extremely useful if you know how to use it, and that's the role of the faculty. Because if you give us, let's say, a kid that says, I would like you to go and solve this differential equation for me, that's going to be pretty quick, and the answer is going to be pretty correct. And is that really what we want to do, to teach them how to solve a differential equation, or are we going to really ask them, what is the use of differential equation in decision-making in life? And so that's one of the challenge. And the other challenge that I think that society is going to face is, what are we going to do with the frontline employees throughout the world? There are billions of them. Are they going to become obsolete? From our point of view, we see that as a great opportunity, because every one of the frontline employees need to be now re-educated and upgraded so that they can occupy a higher level of job that requires that level of knowledge. So that's an opportunity. But think about call centers, truck drivers, deliveries of every sort. All of them are going to be done with machine, and as a result, there is no need for a person. And also the other challenge that I think we are facing is that because we are so in tune in technology these days, that many universities, due to all the pressures that they're facing, financial and otherwise, they are attacking the most important area of education that I believe we should sustain, and that's humanities and social sciences. Because if we don't, we're going to have a whole number of robots walking around and really not knowing how to communicate with each other, work with each other, and respect one another, and understand the history and the human relationships. So those are the big challenges. We are, as a university, we are supposed to have two functions. One is create knowledge, the other one is impart knowledge. Creation of knowledge in the age of artificial intelligence is another challenge. What does that mean? Where are we going to take that? And the impartment of the knowledge again comes back to that issue of sage on the stage. And so the challenges are huge in everything that we do. There are so many great positives, but there are also big challenges, and I'm so glad that we are having this kind of conversation because it's absolutely necessary. And I hope you will have a great, great time today. I just forgot to also mention Assemblyman Mr. Bill Moyne, our own graduates, is here. Welcome, sir. And I hope you will have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hushman. This specifically about we don't want robots running around. Those of you who know the joke. Okay, it is my great pleasure to introduce Mr. David Cole, who is the Chief Innovation Officer for the state of New Jersey and a member of the Governor's Cabinet. A Rutgers alumnus and lifelong resident of New Jersey, Mr. Cole leads efforts to modernize government services and strengthen the state's innovation ecosystem. With him at the helm, the Office of Innovation employs data, technology, and collaborative policy development to improve New Jerseyans' lives. Mr. Cole joined the office in 2020 to help with the state's response to COVID-19, which seems like it was a long time ago, including as a tech co-lead for a vaccine program. In addition, he co-launched the Resident Experience Initiative, assisting agencies with designing digital products that align with new policies and public need and demand. Before entering state government, Mr. Cole was Vice President of Strategy and Operations at an expanding technology startup, where he grew the team of 20 to more than 500 across 4 nations and executed several funding rounds. Additionally, he served in the Obama administration as Senior Advisor to the Chief Information Officer and Deputy Director of New Media. There, he introduced open source technology to the White House. What an innovation. Earlier in his career, Mr. Cole was a software engineer at 18F, a US General Services Administration digital consultancy. There, he launched the Federalist Platform, which has supported over 130 modern federal websites. Mr. David Cole.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming out. It's great to see you all here, folks from so many different backgrounds united by the conversation that we're about to have today around artificial intelligence, how it can affect our world, our lives, and our work. I want to start by acknowledging the folks who have put this event together. Dean Amar, thank you for having me. I wanted to tell you that Dr. Joe says hello, someone on our team who's an incremental part of the team who I believe you've had a chance to work with before. President Hushman, thank you for the introduction, for the remarks here. I was particularly struck as you were describing the vision for where the future will go with things like artificial intelligence. As a kid growing up here, going to Clearview, I think about just where this campus and these buildings were a few years ago to where they are now. So under your tenure, amazing transformation for the institution and for South Jersey as a whole. So thank you for that. And Dean Magyar, Director Magyar, thank you for not only the work that you've done in building this this institution here, but for a commitment to public service throughout your life. I think it speaks to the group that we're able to pull together for an event like this. As folks know, Rowan has at its core a history of teaching, in addition to the expansion and the infusion of research, which is why I think it's incredibly relevant that we have a conversation now around what artificial intelligence is, how it can work, and how we can use it for our best purposes. After I speak here, we're going to be setting up a panel in which we will get into the details of many of the things that the state is doing, both from the executive and the legislature, around expanding the use of artificial intelligence, responsible use of artificial intelligence. So I just want to acknowledge some of my colleagues who will be on that panel, CEO Tim Sullivan, who has been a true champion for not only artificial intelligence, but really making sure that New Jersey is the forefront of the innovation economy and putting us on a competitive edge across the country. And Commissioner Rob Asaro-Angelo, truly a leader in the state for thinking about the ways that technology can improve service delivery, and a key partner in some of the work that we've been able to do. And of course, Senator Andrew Zwicker, who across his career in the legislature has been a champion for science, technology, and good government. Very excited to hear their remarks and appreciate their time here as well. And to all of you for attending, thank you for being here. Thank you for your interest in this topic. It's my privilege to share with you some of the work that we're doing in New Jersey to prepare the state for artificial intelligence, to take advantage of the opportunity and to mitigate the risks that it poses in terms of economic development, government service delivery, and responsible use. But before we get into all those details, let's start with some definitions. As was said in the introduction, I have the benefit of coming here with a bit of an engineering background. My first work in artificial intelligence, which will seem actually very young to some of the researchers who've been studying this for generations, but it was about 7 years ago working in a technology company where we used computer vision to help solve complex navigation and mapping challenges. And so the terms that we're going to talk about today range the gamut from artificial intelligence or machine learning, these broad-based applied sciences of how we use data, information, algorithms, computer science to be able to solve complex problems and make decisions, to generative artificial intelligence, which is a more modern application of artificial intelligence. Folks probably know this with the introduction of ChatGPT a few years ago as the most broad consumer-based application for artificial intelligence. But basically, this is a tool that gives people a very simple way to communicate with an artificial intelligence model. Rather than complex queries or APIs or more programmatic interfaces, you can simply ask it a question, like you might text a friend, and it will give you information based off of an entire world's collection of knowledge that it's been trained upon. So there are many different programs out there. There are copilots, Anthropic models, dozens of different models, some of which now are open source and available to deploy for individual use cases as well as the commercial models. The point really comes down to the same thing. These models are trained on a lot of information, and the information that they're trained on has with it, in many cases, the entirety of human knowledge that's been recorded. But with that knowledge also, and this is an important part as we talk about the risks, come the implicit biases and the things that have been published. I would ask anybody who spends enough time online what you think the discourse, particularly lately online, is. And if that content is informing the models and the training data that we use for the models, how much of that implicit bias comes into the decision making? So while we're going to talk about some really great, powerful use cases for AI in ways that it can improve service delivery and grow our economy, I think it's also very important to know, how do these models get the information that they use, which then they pass back to us? Because all the things that go into the model come out on the other end, and we have to be careful about how we mitigate those. So with those definitions, let's take a look at what the state's been doing here. In 2023, Governor Murphy announced a multi-pronged effort to put the state at the forefront of artificial intelligence. The goal was to enable responsible use of generative artificial intelligence to solve our most complex and pressing problems. The governor described this as an AI moonshot, a decade-long effort, whole of state, whole of the citizens here as well. And those problems could run the range of climate challenges, education, as well as economic equality and more. While the moonshot is a long-term vision, we have been taking at the state level concrete steps to get started now. The governor formed a task force around that time for a year-long study to look at ways that the state could take advantage of artificial intelligence, train the workforce to be able to use artificial intelligence responsibly, to be able to incentivize economic development around artificial intelligence, and to make sure that we have the right safeguards from a policy perspective so that artificial intelligence could be used for its best purposes, and we could make sure that we have the tools that we need to crack down against the illicit purposes. And so that task force has produced a report covering workforce trainings, making the state a magnet for AI investment, and incentivizing new developments and new ideas around the commercialization of artificial intelligence. The report's now public, and we have been implementing many of the recommendations to date. Through the Economic Development Association, and Tim will talk about this, I think, in more detail very soon, the state has undertaken a series of efforts to make sure that businesses in New Jersey have the resources they need to compete, and also attract world-class organizations to New Jersey to be able to take advantage of the talent that we have, the density that we have, the professional class that we have here, and the opportunity, because New Jersey, in addition to having such a talented workforce, has been the Bill of Rights state, has been the state of innovation, has been the state of conscious innovation as well throughout much of its history. We have provided training resources to the entire state workforce. So the over 64,000 folks who are registered in the state workforce have access to a course of generative artificial intelligence training. It's over an hour, broken up into small video modules around topics that cover how can you use artificial intelligence for day-to-day tasks? What are the things to be aware of when you're using artificial intelligence? How does image generation work in different from text generation? So a whole series built in concert with public servants, talking to them about their needs, seeing the challenges that they have, and looking for responsible and effective ways that artificial intelligence can help improve work. So these resources are available to the state. About 20% of the state's workforce have used these and a related tool, which I'll talk about in a second, which is a safe playground for using artificial intelligence tools. And the state also makes these available publicly. So you can find these online. Any institution in the state, any institution in the world could benefit from them. And in fact, we've had several states come to us and ask for access to the content, which we made freely available, as well as for advice on how did we get started in New Jersey, because every state in the country and probably every jurisdiction across the world is grappling with many of the same issues that we'll discuss over the course of the day here. I want to talk about what our team, the Office of Innovation, does and put that in the context of how we help improve service delivery. We're actually a relatively new team by government standards, founded in 2018 when Governor Murphy appointed the state's first Chief Innovation Officer. And the purpose of that role was to grow our economy through the use of innovative technology, to make sure that government is delivering effective and efficient services across the board with a particular focus on equity, and to make sure that we are using data and analytics to inform our decision-making across the state. Our team has several key principles in the work that we do. The first is that we believe in being human-centered, and in this time of rapid technology acceleration, this has never been more important. And human-centered to us means that when we design a system, when the state offers a service, we are talking to the folks who will benefit or depend on that service. That can be the individual residents or business owners who are using something like one of the state's benefits programs or the business platform that we maintain. Or it can be the staff who maintain those programs as well, who hold a wealth of insights and will be the first to tell you about opportunities that programs can be improved. So we want to make sure that the insight that we have from people informs the design of systems. That's a constant feedback loop as well, which brings us to the next principle about being agile and focusing on continuous improvement. Many times, and I'm sure folks who have been close to government have seen this, it takes a lot of work to get a government contract going. And so there can be years of work to just define the requirements, years of work to implement the solution, and then some years of work to actually try to deploy and make adjustments because of how much time has passed. So one of the things that we believe in and our partners across the state have embraced is the approach of being agile, trying to focus on what can we do in 2 weeks. If we're looking at somebody who needs a critical benefit program, we may have a 10-year modernization plan, but there's probably something we can do in the next 2 weeks that's going to affect those folks who are waiting for that access immediately. And so we look for those opportunities, and we start small with iterative developments, what we call them quick wins very often, and we build from there, leading to deeper and deeper change, where eventually we can take on some of the systems that have been very hard to move, but we focus with this methodology. And so beyond establishing the team, one of the things that we have been trying to do now is look for the ways that we can take the traditional approach of being human-centered, thinking about designing of systems with folks in the room, and then delivering iterative improvements, and then bring in new technology like data analytics and artificial intelligence to accelerate that work. We're fortunate, as I mentioned, to have the leadership of Governor Murphy here through launching the AI Hub to bring public and private institutions together to work on this problem. The governor is constantly at ribbon cuttings and celebrating the opportunity to bring new businesses into the state, including one in Piscataway just last week. And we've also been working with the legislature to sign important legislation to protect against some of the risks of AI. So I'm sure many folks have seen a very terrible incident in northern Jersey around the use of deepfake technology, basically to create illicit images, in this case of minors, that it would be illegal under any circumstance, but the accessibility of technology like artificial intelligence makes this almost too easy to think about. And so working with the legislature, the governor was able to sign legislation to make that illegal and give the state the tools that we need to be able to enforce our laws against this and any other similar kinds of illicit uses. So I think there's more work to do, and we look forward to the partnership there. But I want to talk about now, beyond just the macro issues, what are some of the things that, when we think about service delivery, technology can actually improve, and particularly artificial intelligence can improve? I'll give you a clear example here, and this was done in partnership with Commissioner Asaro Angelo's team. Very early on, it's one of the first experiments that our team had with using generative artificial intelligence to improve service delivery. How many folks have received an email or very often a print letter from the government? You could probably visualize what that looks like. It's probably something that has a template that's been in place for quite a while. Very likely it's been written by folks who want to make sure that there's a lot of care into the words so that nothing can be taken in the wrong way and that all of the legal definitions and things are represented. But what can get lost in that context as a user of that service, as a beneficiary of that program, is what actually am I supposed to do with this email? What's the next step? Not what are all the things in bold red that I need to be careful not to do or I'll get in trouble, but what I actually need to do to make sure that I can give the government the information they need to move the case along. And so designers on our team, working with experts in the Department of Labor, took some of those templates of unemployment insurance emails that the state had been sending out and then passed them through some models using ChatGPT. Explain to me what are the next 3 things I should do if I were to receive an email like this. How can you explain this to me in simpler terms? Those kinds of prompts produce simplifications. They're simplifications that people who study content design and content writing often provide, but there isn't enough access to that talent across the state. And so using a tool like this accelerates it, and it makes it available so that the people who know the policies can also then focus on the human-centered, the simple, the plain language content. And so this was just one experiment, but part of that feedback loop of being iterative that I talked about was not just doing this once and then forgetting about it. We took those designs and those improved messages into research conversations with folks, and we asked them, read this first email and tell us what you think it means. How confident are you that you know what you need to do next? And then we showed them the new designs that did the same thing, and we actually tracked and quantified the difference of improvements from the previous designs and the new designs. We saw about a 35% improvement in people saying that they had confidence in what they needed to do with the new designs. And it actually decreased the time for people to send the information in when the state was asking for information to move their claims along. So that's just one very simple example, but the technology behind it is actually now completely accessible. Anybody in the state, through access to the training and through access to the tools around artificial intelligence that we've been able to provide, can undertake experiments like that. So while we have innovative partners that lead the way, we can then expand that approach across the state as an example for responsible but also effective use cases that's going to have an impact on people's lives. Another example here is around analyzing comments. On the products and the things that we work on, we have received over the last 2 years 64,000 comments from the public about how things are working and how things can be improved. It's vitally important for us to have that feedback, but it also can be prohibitive to draw insight from that. So something that generative artificial intelligence is actually well suited for is to find patterns in large data sets. So we built a system that takes those comments, passes it through an AI model with some prompts about summarizing, pulling out sentiment, pulling out key terms, and then stores that in a dashboard that the people who run those programs can take a look at. And so they get real-time information about what are people saying. We've used comments and feedback like this to find out things like people are looking for a 1099 form on the wrong page, and if we added a link on another page, we would actually be able to decrease the time to find that form. So very specific granular things that people know and experience when they're on the other end of these systems, but sometimes get lost in all of the volume of feedback that come back to the government. And so this is another use case that I think is well suited that we've been able to scale across many different programs. Last use case I'll share concretely here is around improving call centers. As President Hushman had talked about, frontline workers actually have a lot to gain from an artificial intelligence kind of tool set, as well as potential risks because of the automation that might replace some of that work. In the state, we have been very focused on making sure that everybody's trained on artificial intelligence so that this is not about replacing jobs, but in many ways, focusing on giving people the tools to improve the quality of how they work and the quality of the experience in which they do the work. So not only do they have the tools to help do the work faster, but maybe it's a little bit easier. I've spent now dozens of hours talking to folks in the state, including hours spent in the call center, listening to calls, working and learning from the experts across labor, across taxation and other call centers, to hear those frontline conversations. And you hear some of the most salient and in some cases troubling stories about what people in the state are going through. And our frontline staff have to experience that every single day, time and time again. So if we can use artificial intelligence to do things like make the menu structure more clear so people can start to get answers while they're waiting on hold or before they talk to an agent, or give the agents access to training materials in real time based on the questions that people have asked when they're calling in, that improves the ability to answer those questions, and hopefully it improves the experience that the call center agents are having as well, so that they can have the stamina and the ability to sustain themselves through very hard work. The state has not reached a point where we have so many folks answering calls that we're looking at replacement. Not the case at all. In fact, using tools like this can help us reach the demand that we have with the labor force that we have today. So the last, beyond those agency-specific use case that I want to talk about, there's something that our team, in partnership with the Office of Information Technology and with learnings from folks across the state, put together. And so when we talked about the training, we wanted to provide these courses for people to understand how to use artificial intelligence, but it's not just enough to learn about how to use it from a video. We want people to be hands-on, to actually try it. And if I had one challenge for everybody in the room here, if you haven't already tried an generative artificial intelligence tool, sign up for an account and experience it. You probably have access to it through work or through personal life. There are free tools out there. And the point is not to say that it's going to solve all the problems. It's to understand what it's really good at, and also the things where it starts to break down. I think that intuitive understanding is going to inform us all as we go forward. So in that spirit, we've built what we call the New Jersey AI Assistant, and it's essentially a version or a clone of something like ChatGPT that's available to the state's workforce. Over 14,000 folks are now active users of this tool, signing in, asking prompts that can help improve the work that they do. They're writing better emails, as we've discussed, and website copy by using this to simplify language. They're summarizing long reports and documents that they have to be able to get insights from the complex information. And they're focusing on brainstorming new ideas, asking artificial intelligence for, if you're trying to solve a problem, what's been done in other states? Give me a field scan of the information out there. It can be a very effective way to get smart quickly. The important part, and what we cover in the training then, is once you get that information, check it as you would any other information that we receive, whether it's published information from another human or machine-generated information. It also helps with analyzing code for some of the modernization efforts that we have been a part of and other states are working on as well. So now at scale, roughly 20% of the state workforce having access to training, having access to these tools. We feel like we're in a position to embrace artificial intelligence and make sure that folks are aware of the positive use cases as well as some of the risks that we need to mitigate, and particularly as public servants pay attention to. I want to just highlight a couple on that category of risks, of things to think about as well here. You'll hear these terms probably throughout the day and as you encounter, but they're important to remember. So the first is the concept of a hallucination, which is when you train complex data sets with a lot of information, and then you give the model instructions like answer this question as if you were somebody providing help or assistance, the models are going to try to predict what you want to hear. That's the most important training that they have. What do they think that you as the user asking it a question is going to want to hear? And so what that might lead to do is the model to give you what seems like a very confident response, but that is not tied into the reality of what human intelligence might know. So the ways we check, again, is ask and use tools that can provide citations, that can provide sources, so that you can go back and check the footnotes, make sure that you're able to trace the source of information that you're getting. You might get a lot of information, distill complex information into very clear patterns, but then be able to fact check that as you go. It's one of the ways to combat the hallucination risk that's inherent. The second that I mentioned already is implicit bias. When you think about what information goes into a model, just know that that information and the biases represented in that information will likely come out of the model. And so you have to think about, am I passing information to this model and asking it to make a decision based on factors that I as a human wouldn't consider? If you're asking it to in any way provide information about somebody who's eligible for benefits, much of the information about that individual is not relevant, and you would not use it, and it would be illegal to use it to make determinations about benefits. So don't pass that to the model. Even if you don't think the model is necessarily going to use it, models can find patterns. They can look at patterns of location and make inferences about socioeconomic status of those locations. They can look at names and make inferences about race and ethnicity and other protected classes. So it's just something to be mindful, where the models can give you a lot of very helpful information to distill decision making, but you want to make sure that you're aware of the biases that might come with that, not do the things that we wouldn't do if we were making completely human-generated decisions. The last part on this around mitigating the risk is the concept of a human in the loop, which is very simply, if we are using artificial intelligence in our work, we, particularly as public servants, need to take responsibility for the output of that work. We're not going to put something out there to the public that has been machine-generated and unvetted, certainly without proper disclaimers and proper controls in place. But in many cases, we just want to make sure that we're being very good about doing the review process that we would do and using the models to make that review process simpler and faster, but not to replace the review process. And it's very important that the folks who are trained to use these tools understand that their role is still critical and they accept the responsibility for the outputs of the models. So given that, just to close on a bit more personal note, as I'd mentioned, working in technology, working in startups, my first exposure and use of artificial intelligence was around computer vision, a bit of the category of machine learning, different than generative artificial intelligence. Here in the state, we've had the opportunity to deploy artificial intelligence to improve the efficiency and the efficacy of government services. But I think a moment that really made the radical change that we're about to experience visceral for me, and effective in a personal way, actually took place at Christmas time this year. Going through the usual routine with family. Mom, what do you want for Christmas? Meta glasses, she said. And this was a bit strange. So I knew about Meta glasses from an earlier incarnation. Snapchat, actually, I think, was one of the first companies, and then Google had these things. Basically, Ray-Ban Wayfarers with little cameras installed, so you can capture moments when you're out with your friends, produce content. It's really essentially a modern evolution on a selfie. Well, the detail to know about my mom here is actually she's legally blind, and so she's progressively lost her vision for the course of the last 2 decades. And what she found, reading and listening to some of the forums that she's a part of, is that folks in the visually impaired blind community found that the Meta glasses, because of the combination of the camera, some of that computer vision technology, and the ability to talk to it, opened up a whole world of synthetic vision that wasn't possible through any other technology. So, and she was very kind about it. You know, they're expensive. She said, don't worry, I'll help pay for them, but I just want to try them. Maybe we can see how they work. So we got them, and you know, within the first day, she put them on. She looked around the room, and she asked, hey, Meta, what's around me? And it describes her room, her apartment, in a way that she hadn't really seen before. It said also something she took pride in. The room looks to be very clean and well-designed, which she did all the work herself. So the AI can be trained to be sensitive to human needs there. But it also said there's artwork in the room. So she said, you know, Meta, tell me more about the artwork. What am I looking at? And the artwork that she was looking at was a shadow box creation, a mix of sculpture and crayon work that my sister had done during her time in art school. And so the Meta system described it. It said you're looking at a young girl who appears to have a hand over her mouth, darker skin against a violent sky and stormy imagery, and then there's some vegetation. And so she could have a discussion with the robot asking to see this artwork that her daughter had created for her years ago in a way that was never possible. And I am pretty sure, I've never talked to anybody I've met about this, that was not the intended use case of this technology when they created it. But sometimes the unintended consequences can be the most powerful. And so the reason I leave you with this story is to think about not only that unintended consequences can be risky, they can, and we need to be very careful about that, but they can enable things that we would not have even thought, or that maybe even the commercial incentive to invest in this kind of technology for the disabled community wouldn't have been there. And so as we think about artificial intelligence in our work, as we think about the ways that this opens up new use cases for all of us, I hope you leave inspired. I hope you leave with a healthy skepticism for the new world that we're about to enter, but also the ability to see patterns and things that we couldn't find to solve some of the most complex problems that society has ever had to face. So thank you, everyone, for your time.
So we're going to, Mark is going to pass the microphone for anyone who has questions.
There we go.
Hi, Mark.
You're my plan. Hi, Maria.
That was an excellent talk. Thank you so much. Just a bit of a minor question, but I'm curious. So you were talking about the volume of comments that you receive that AI can help to process. Is there any thought about what percentage of those comments are actually AI generated in the first place, and how does that factor in, if at all?
It's an excellent point. And so we've sort of had, I mean, there's sort of gallows humor where we, as a government, have a lot of focus on procurement reform. RFPs can be very complex. We imagine using AI to improve that, and then we imagine the vendors using AI to respond to the bid, and then using AI to evaluate. So you end up in almost this situation where the machines are talking to themselves. We have tried to classify some of the comments coming in. We don't have anything where we've seen a massive influx of AI-generated comments that's overwhelming what we think are the human-generated ones. But one of the techniques is that we ask a model to look for patterns that might be similar across other comments, whether that's people in organized campaigns or machine-generated. And you know, we're still evaluating to see how good it is at that, but it's something that we are being mindful of to try to reduce sort of that feedback loop. But I think it's a very fair point and something that we will probably see more of, and we're certainly seeing it in hiring as well, where folks are using AI to contribute resumes and cover letters and things like that.
Cool. Thank you. Over here. Okay. So just a quick question on the rollout of the generative AI tutorials for the state. I know this is a challenge we all see at large organizations to kind of bring people up to a common level of knowledge. And I just wondered if you had any advice or information that you could share about how you made it as successful as you could.
Yeah, I won't steal the lead from what I think is the most successful agency at rolling it out. I got some tips from the Department of Labor coming up. But for us, I think it was a combination of making sure that the training would actually be driven by the questions that folks were asking. So we put out surveys of the public sector workforce and asked them, how familiar are you with artificial intelligence? Use that to gauge the audience a bit. And then if you are familiar, what ways you might use it. If you've heard of it, but you haven't tried it, in what ways you might think it could be useful to your job, or what are the toughest parts of your job. So that informed the content development. And then we wanted to make sure that when we promoted the content, we also tied that back so folks knew this was designed in concert really with them. We had wonderful top-down support. So the governor actually recorded an intro video encouraging the state workforce to take the time. We worked with the leadership at the cabinet level to ask folks to create the time in folks' schedule to be able to take the trainings as well, and then where possible, facilitate discussions or incorporate it throughout the course of work. So it's a constant process. We're still sending out reminder emails and trying to get folks who haven't taken action yet to make the time for it. But those are some of the tactics that we've used to, I think, get some of the folks who have been most early adopters of it moving.
Thank you. As a mayor of a small municipality, how do you see AI helping us serve our constituents in a better way, be more fiscally responsible, or just anything in general? And I would love to partner with the university to see if they'd be willing to do a shared service with our town to see how AI can come into play. So.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Appreciate the question. Something that we've actually thought a bit about and have some personal connections to this specific problem. So first of all, as a mayor, obviously, resources are going to be incredibly constrained. And there are so many problems that, with the benefit of limited resources, probably you could find creative solutions. So one of the first things that I've seen used at the local level is that field research aspect that I was talking about. So, if you have something like a traffic safety issue and you're looking to find out what are the ways, describe the situation, right? We have this intersection, here's what the stop signs look like, here's what the ownership is, whether it's local, county, say whoever has responsibility there, and then describe what the problem is to the model, and then say, what are some of the ways similar municipalities across the country have solved this? And you'll get some ideas there. Maybe ideas you get through engaging in consultants, but you can get it just in a fast iteration, so you can explore a lot more. And then obviously the next part is, and how can I fund it, right? What grant programs are available, what's been successful? We've used that in some cases to find programs that other municipalities in New Jersey have used, but not all, and so you can sort of share what those lessons are that worked. So finding ideas, finding potential funding sources, and then you can just keep going, right? If you're going to do a grant proposal, it takes a lot of time to write a grant proposal, so you can engage the AI in, here's the information that we have that we think is relevant, can you help format this in terms of a grant proposal? Edit that, engage the AI into continued edit. So it can take the place of a lot of that manual work. I think really compress the time from research to getting grants out, or even, as we talked a bit about procurement, getting the RFPs and RFQs out to be able to start soliciting the talent that you need to work on those problems. But I would think about traffic safety. I would think about development, about parks and recreation. In each of these areas, getting access to the ideas, what's the most creative solutions that are out there, getting access to the funding resources, what haven't we considered, are all some of the common patterns. So using the AI as a potential tool can help, I think, decrease the time there.
Okay, great. One last question.
Sure.
Thanks for that great update, Dave. What countries, states, or regions have you benchmarked? Because everyone's racing to leverage AI around the world, but who's doing it really well and has been sort of a role model?
Well, besides New Jersey, I'll talk about some of the other ones. It's actually, there are different ways to look at this. There's the economic development angle, which I think, again, and we're going to talk about more in the panel, New Jersey has been leading, has some very innovative approaches. We had an AI hub kind of announcement and convening last year, and the president of Microsoft came down, Brad Smith, and I think spoke to this specific question, which is every country, every state is racing towards this goal. Everybody wants to be first. And the analogy, if I remember correctly, that Brad Smith had used at that point, if you think about transformative technologies like the printing press, the people who invent it are not necessarily the people who take advantage of it the best. And I think he used the case of, obviously, the printing press being a bunch of technology but largely integrated in Germany. And the country that emerged the most successful out of the printing sort of economy that followed was actually the Netherlands, because they were able to embrace the technology and use it to share knowledge, which then increased other economic benefits. So I think New Jersey actually is poised well to do that because of some of the investments that we have. We focus on my team on how we use technology to improve service delivery. And I can tell you, been very fortunate to have many convenings through the National Governors Association and other groups to share ideas. Folks are coming to New Jersey to ask about how did we build the training. So that's why we made it open source. How did we develop the sandbox in a way that could be safe, the AI assistant in a way that could be safe, and scale it. Other countries have gone into commercial partnerships where they sign a deal and they buy licenses to provide the commercial technology. Ours is a hybrid approach where we have a commercial technology platform behind the scenes, but we actually developed the website and the interface that folks use on our own. And just to give you a comparative, the commercial approach that we've been seeing is about $20 per user. So you can multiply that out by 14,000 users in the state. The approach that we're using is about 16 cents per user per month. So we're saving over $250,000 a month with this approach. And that's something that now other jurisdictions are taking a look at as well. So, you know, I like to talk about the things that we're doing well, not just for the sake of kind of highlighting New Jersey, but it's always humbling to have folks come to you and ask you, you know, how did you do this? We're struggling with the same challenges to be able to share that. And we do look for inspiration across a variety of states and countries as well. And if anybody has a good idea, we want to pull that in. So, but thank you for the question.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
First panel. Commissioner. And Senator. Commissioner Sarangelo. Yeah, if you would join us up here. Right. Got it. And Senator Zwicker is right here. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm good. I'm Mark Magyar. I'm the director of the Sweeney Center for Public Policy. I'd like to thank President Hushman, who invited us in 2.5 years ago and has given us an incredible latitude to explore cross-cutting issues when they're hot. There is no issue hotter today than like artificial intelligence. Anwar Lamar, our dean at the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, and Nadal Boyanaya, who's the associate vice president at Rowan for artificial intelligence. First started talking about the need for us to do a policy conference on artificial intelligence last spring. Things move quickly, but not that quickly. It took us about a year to get here, but I'm glad we're here, and the room full of people indicates just how important this issue is. We have a very distinguished panel here. I'm going to do a quick introductions, and then they will each give opening presentations. Tim Sullivan is a repeat offender at the Sweeney Center conferences. I think this is either number 4 or number 5 as the head of the Economic Development Authority in New Jersey. He has been at the forefront of like any number of issues, and being that energy has been one of our principal focuses. He has been at repeated energy conferences over the last 4 years. Labor and Workforce Development Commissioner Robyn Angelo. And aside, I replaced his father teaching the labor history course at Rutgers in the year 2000 after being a guest lecturer for him. It comes from a tremendous labor background on from both his mother and his father, and we're glad to have him here because the Department of Labor has really taken a major role. Senator Zwicker I've known since he first ran for office, and bringing the ratio of lawyers to a scientist in the New Jersey Assembly down to a 45 to 1 from a 45 to a nothing. I would have thought this was a real advance when it occurred. His day job is as a vice president at the Plasma Physics Laboratory at Princeton University. So we're going to go right to the opening presentations. Tim, you're up first.
Rob should go first. Actually, finish with the slides.
Well, we'll let Rob go first.
Okay, fine. Good morning, everybody, and thanks, Mark. By the way, the ratings for that class went way up once you replaced my father for the labor history class. Thanks, President Guzman, for hosting us. Mark mentioned Rutgers, and I say every time I see the president that I'm a proud Rutgers alum, but I wish that we were doing more things like Rowan is doing across the board. So thank you so much for hosting this. The policy conferences here have been great. Thanks to my colleagues in the cabinet, Dave and Tim, and my good friend Senator Zwicker. Honestly, all the folks in government I work with, like these three are the ones I work with the most. So I was a little worried there's like an intervention or something going on this morning. I just want to say something. I'm super Jersey proud as always, but Dave mentioned a little bit while he was up there that people are coming to us to ask us about AI and about a million other things. And that wasn't the case in New Jersey government for a very long time for both parties. So one of the things I'm most proud about this administration, and not just saying this to my boss, but we're very big about working with other states, working with federal government, about the things we're learning, about stealing their ideas as well. And I think for far too long, New Jersey was way too insular on this kind of stuff. We're really leading the way on so many different things that even the small universe that I touch, we're involved in a lot of stuff that other states want to come ask us about things. So I just want to thank everybody on the panel for being a part of that. So we have a long history of building innovation, I'm sure as Dave talked about, and most importantly into our state's framework. With AI becoming a bigger part of our lives every day, we try to make sure that we're innovating with it in an ethical manner to effectively boost our state's economy and our state's workforce. And that starts with our department's own employees. Who's doing the slides? Next slide. I'll go through some quick because I'm sure Dave mentioned all this. Governor Murphy created the task force in 2023 to develop policies for fair AI use by state employees to help enhance our economic growth, and the state policy that guides AI by keeping ethical practices like independent fact-checking and confidentiality at the core. The policy, which is publicly available, like almost everything we do in the government here, offers guidelines for using AI effectively for different applications, including drafting text and translations for specific lengths, styles, audiences, and reading levels, which is very important to the folks that we serve. State workers have been assigned a mandatory free virtual AI training course, which DOL has had 100% participation in, and we're the first to get to 100%. Listen, we have like dozens of mandatory trainings. Nothing's ever been at 100%. And Dave mentioned the survey they did before this training went out, and I was very surprised to see that a lot of times when people talk about the fear of AI taking jobs, I figured that government folks would be the most scared because bureaucracy, sort of rote things, doing things over and over again. The excitement level amongst government employees was way higher than that amongst those in the public sector. And I think because they are burdened by these rote things they have to do and policies, they saw the future that AI can help them with to make them be more effective in the folks that they're reaching out to. But yes, we are competitive, so I was very happy to get to 100% for any other department in the government. I use AI myself on a regular basis, probably not as much as I should be, whether it be making remarks a little bit tighter or turning bullet points into remarks. I use it for mapping reasons, like how to use it to turn Excel file addresses into a Google map, about where our facilities are in the state. So I'm always trying to figure out new ways I can use it and sort of lead by example for our folks. When the governor did the video, I did a message for my whole staff as well, showing them how important it is not to be scared, and I give them concrete examples of how it can be used. And I think that's what's important about Dave's presentations today and also in general. I'm always looking for the specific way something can be used. So specifically, next slide, we're constantly on the lookout for new opportunities. We've already harnessed the power of AI to enhance language access and customer experience, to do all we can to better serve even more residents and improve service delivery. A human-made glossary of complex terms and phrases in the unemployment insurance realm is helping put access to benefits within reach for more New Jersey workers who speak Spanish. These translations have been so effective, they're being used to feed AI in other states and benefit even more workers in need. In fact, I'm proud to share that we've already worked with the Illinois Department of Labor to use the same kind of tools on their website as well. And so we use AI, one, to make our own regular mailings and everything else in English more understandable. Then we use that plain language for the translations into Spanish, and also use to make sure we're having translations that made sense to Spanish speakers from Puerto Rico, from the Dominican, from Chile, wherever it may be. That wasn't just plain Spanish. The Spanish was specific to each area that was understandable for all of them. But it has limitations. Working to overcome this by keeping humans in the loop, and at the heart of the work and learning that we do to assist AI along the way. In December, we launched large language model training materials to enhance language access to UI for both English and Spanish speakers. We developed this with the support of US Digital Response and Google.org. These materials will help government agencies create AI translations assistance for UI content through the use of off-the-shelf generative AI models. This will help make public benefits information clearer and more accessible to workers in need. We use these LLM materials to optimize our AI platform and pave the path for other states interested in developing their own tailored solution. It's helping us reduce administrative overhead and eliminate duplicative processes. A lot of folks ask me, first they ask, what are you going to do next? So we're down to about 279 days. Anybody counting over here? I'm focused on what we're doing now. No, I'm excited about the next 279 days because we'll do everything we can to put what we've done in concrete, is how the governor says it. And to me, I see a responsibility to my current team and my future and my successors to reduce as much self-inflicted administrative burden as possible. We talk all the time, and Dave touched on this earlier, especially for me, talking about federal mandates. Unemployment's complicated because of 7,000 pages of federal regulations. We also have a lot of self-inflicted administrative burden in the state. Just processes that were made up by a CFO 3 decades ago, or by some assistant commissioner last decade, or whatever it is. So we're trying to get our folks to focus on what can we do now to make our operation tighter, to make our, again, make our administrative burden less in our own department, to serve as an example for others and to make it easier for the folks coming in behind us. Our appeal tribunal team, not yet, piloted the AI drafting assistant, or ADA, to evaluate the 3 most common unemployment appeals issues. Following its successful pilot, it's being scaled to cover additional appeal issues. It'll be deployed to more of our appeals examiners to help them perform their job more efficiently. I love that's being used for UI, not just because that's the one where we need the most help, but also I think sometimes people think about unemployment. It's like the oldest government bureaucratic process you can have. But we've been leading in using AI. So I think I've really been, our staff's been really invigorated to be part of this process. Importantly, we're keeping humans at the heart of these interactions and empowering our staff with more time for the complex cases that actually need human beings. This improved communication cuts down on calls and reduces errors. AI has become an important tool that provides cutting-edge support to workers, but it does not replace human workers. In addition to creating better experiences for workers applying for UI, we're also using AI to give job seekers a comprehensive service to provide professional training and career opportunities. Next slide. In March of 24, we launched mycareer.nj.gov, an interactive cloud-based hub that provides personalized career resources. Users benefit from AI-generated recommendations for career opportunities, job postings, and relevant training programs. We've already had about 350,000 unique users on this platform. And every single person who applies for UI gets to use this as a free resource as well. 350,000 is a great start. Hope we'll get to all 4.4 million workers at some point. But AI bridges the data gaps by analyzing online job posts and public sources to identify emerging and declining skills. It also provides powerful insights on earning potential based on wage records and employment outcomes. You see a lot of stuff on websites, on private sector websites. They're really projections. Nobody knows really what somebody makes except for us and the IRS. So we're using that data, anonymized, obviously. Yeah, and Elon Musk, yes. So we're the only ones that have this really source of truth about what somebody makes in a certain job. And we're using it behind the scenes of this to make sure we're giving the best, most accurate predictions about someone's possible wages. Users can either upload their resumes or enter their latest job titles and level of education. The site automatically generates a list of skills associated with their jobs. And from there, the user can select the type of recommendation they want, a job training, a training program, or a career transition that leverages their skills. And the program generates a recommendation, just like when you type a prompt into an AI program. There's also resources available for all New Jersey residents, including free AI training with Metrics Learning. It's not as good as the one that the state did, but still pretty good at nj.metricslearning.com. Next slide. Beyond these resources, we're always engaging employers across sectors to address their workforce needs and actual skills gap. Our industry partnerships team proactively fosters connections between business and multiple public entities to address these challenges head-on and ensure New Jersey remains at the helm of AI innovation. Our AI workforce forums have brought together hundreds of employers educators, and workforce professionals. Our industry partnership serves some of New Jersey's top sectors: life sciences, manufacturing, energy, healthcare, and transportation, distribution, logistics. And we know AI is already touching every single one of those. In life sciences, we partner with the New Jersey Institute of Technology to host events and educate students about AI's role in surgical planning, mental health diagnoses, and accelerated drug formulation. We've had about 300 students from more than 20 high schools and colleges attend this event, and they heard from leaders at Bausch & Lomb, J&J, Laura Health, Brainify, and Bristol-Myers Squibb. Our industry partnership in manufacturing is forging new paths through the Department of Education's Expanding Career Pathways in Artificial Intelligence grant. With Mercer County Technical Schools, one of the grantees, we're developing a comprehensive AI career pathway program that includes machine learning, problem solving with AI tools, and ethical consideration for AI use. This program is enhanced by collaboration with industry leaders like AT&T, GenMab, Samsung, and Croda, who provide valuable feedback to ensure the curriculum meets current industry needs. There's also the Department of Education's Artificial Intelligence Innovation and Education Grant, which is revolutionizing how students interact with AI in the classroom. This grant is supporting 10 school districts to foster AI literacy and integration. Last slide. So I know there's a couple bills in the legislative table that will directly impact our department. One would establish an AI apprenticeship program in our department, and the other would create the AI Labor Market Study Commission to assess AI's impact on jobs and identify ways to help displaced workers transition to AI-driven roles. I sort of showed you some of the tools already. I cannot comment on pending legislation, but maybe Senator Zwicker will be able to give a better picture of what's happening from the legislative standpoint. So thank you for having me here today. I'm happy about the collaboration we have with Rowan on so many fronts, and I'm so happy to be South Jersey's commissioner in the cabinet. I'm sorry, Dave's in the cabinet now too. But I used to be the highest-ranking Eagles fan in the state, but that might be passed by. But thanks, Mark, for having me here today. And
thank you very much. Tim?
Morning, everybody. Honored to be here. President Hushman, thank you so much for having us. I'm wearing an owl pin. Not just any owl pin, but I stole this directly from the provost, who assured me that he had a jar of them in his desk, and it wasn't a big deal. Yeah, but man, look at that. That's a nice pin. Your Senate one's nice too. Anyway, it's an honor to be here. Mark, thank you for having me. I've been uninvited guest at many of the Sweeney Center gatherings, so thank you and the Center's namesake, Senator Sweeney, for having me and having us. And Commissioner, Senator, what is your you don't get what is Dave? Let's see, bud. Chief. You do this me all the time, like CEO Sullivan. That's a stupid thing to call me. Anyway, it's great to be here. Talk a little bit about some things Governor Murphy is doing to lead on driving the economic upside and the economic growth potential for artificial intelligence. There's sort of two ways to think about AI and its impact on the economy. And again, I think you mentioned Brad Smith's talk at the convening last year. I think this is one of those times when the hype machine is not actually overdoing it. I think we're at this precipice, or we're probably past the precipice. We are in this moment where AI and generative AI in particular is transforming and having an impact on everything. You go back and look at those commercials for like Prodigy back in the 90s. Like, does your business need an internet web presence? Yeah, everyone did. It undersold the hype. Like, we're at this moment where like this is going to touch everything. If you are in any industry, if you do any profession, if you live in the world, artificial intelligence is going to touch how you exist, how we exist. And so I think there's from an economic perspective, there's kind of two lanes that we think about here, and this is something Governor Murphy has challenged us to think about both. One is pure play AI companies, the AI industry, whether that's data centers, whether that's hyperscalers, whether that's the Magnificent Seven, whatever you want to call most of those companies that are sort of driving AI innovation. And New Jersey's got a homegrown success story in CoreWeave, which is, as of a couple weeks ago, publicly traded, worth a lot of money, good for those folks. A proverbial 2 folks in a garage, 2 folks at a desk that turned into a great big company headquartered in Livingston, now trading on the NASDAQ, worth a lot of money. That's one piece of it. But I think Jersey's real lane for success is going to be sort of the application side, the use case side of artificial intelligence, and that's going to be in industries in which we are already either dominant or growing growing stronger by the day. Rob mentioned drug discovery, drug formulation. Pharma is a huge opportunity to accelerate, or pharma represents a huge opportunity for the acceleration of innovation and life-saving cures that otherwise would take thousands of years worth of research. You can do that in a matter of, months. And what that means, I have no clue, neither do you. But it means something interesting and important. And that's a huge opportunity. Pharma is one example. FinTech, financial services is another. Energy, clean energy, including fusion. Always thank the senator. Any of a variety of ways that we can think about energy. Infrastructure. How about the application of AI to, I don't know, traffic? Do we have any of that? There are huge opportunities where Jersey can be really the use case state. And what that means for transforming industries, film and television, digital media, life sciences broadly. I should have mentioned medtech and digital health. So we are really pushing ahead on a number of different fronts to kind of continue to plant the seeds for long-term economic growth and long-term innovative capacity. A couple weeks ago, Governor Murphy cut the ribbon on the Princeton, New Jersey AI Innovation Hub in Princeton with Princeton University. And if you're judged by the company you keep, as the governor always likes to allude to his late mother as saying, state of New Jersey via the EDA, Microsoft, CoreWeave, and Princeton University. That's a trio of partners that we're really proud to be standing next to. That's one of 10 strategic innovation centers that we have stood up, and we are working on a bunch more. I don't want to say more than I can, but certainly we are looking to expand our partnerships and our strategic innovation centers. In fact, with two different ones that we're working on with partners that are sitting to my left and to my right. That we're going to continue to try and grow that innovative capacity, because I think what New Jersey didn't get right for 30 or 40 years, after having written the book on R&D driven commercialization and growth and scale of companies, from whether it's Bell Labs, Sarnoff Labs, what happened in South Jersey and Camden from RCA, what happened around AT&T and Bell Labs in North Jersey, we lost our way with regard to generating new generations of startups.
Mm-hmm.
And these strategic innovation centers that the governor has championed, that has, he's allocated $250 million of budget funding. So thank you to both of our legislators and appropriators for supporting that. Assemblyman Moen, good to see you. Is really betting on our innovative capacity, because we want to see tremendous uptick in the number of folks that are making a go at trying to stand up and start up and scale up new companies. And that's not an ideological perspective on big companies versus small companies, or big Fortune 500s versus startups. That is a pretty tried and true economic theory, that the way you get durable and enduring job creation is not from big companies moving around and switching headquarters, though you got to play that game, and that's an important part of what we do as well. It's from growing and scaling and turning a company that has 2 or 3 or 4 people into 2 or 3 or 4,000 people. That's how you get durable job creation. That's how Silicon Valley has been doing it. It's how Austin does it. It's how New York has done it over the years, is getting growth from early stage companies that grow and scale and add people. It's hard to think of a better champion anywhere in the world, but certainly in New Jersey and the New Jersey Senate, than Andrew Zwicker, who has been our partner in things like the Innovation Evergreen Fund, the Innovation Fellows Program, which is a really important tool. We just rolled out an AI cohort version of that. Rob's on our board. He's a great champion of all this, and a great partner and friend in all that we are trying to do around all this, as is Dave and his great colleagues at Innovation. Innovation Fellows is an interesting idea. So there's lots of people with an idea for a business. I bet if we went around the room and asked everybody here, you all, as you put your head on the pillow, think about something you could do. My wife wants to start a coffee truck. That's not the kind of thing AI Innovation Fellows is for. By the way, I'm married to... She should do it. I agree. We could use the income. We talked earlier. I'm married to a sociologist, by the way, so I sent her in real time your extolling the virtues of humanities and social sciences to save us from the killer robots that will otherwise subsume us. She appreciated that. As a spouse of a sage on the stage, we got to make sure we figure out what the future of those jobs is as well. But we think about innovate. The potential game-changing company opportunities that exist inside all of our heads. A lot of folks would love to leave their current job and start a new business and make a run at entrepreneurship. But they don't have the money to do so. They can't forego their salary for a year or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10, and their mortgage broker or their spouse certainly won't let them do that either. And disproportionately, by the way, folks who look like me tend to have more access to resources from friends and family or inherited wealth or whatever to make a go of it. But particularly if you look at communities of color, women entrepreneurs, immigrant entrepreneurs, LGBT entrepreneurs, veteran entrepreneurs don't have the resources to make a go of it. So we're doing essentially salary replacement, fronting a couple $100,000 of money for companies that have a real business plan. This isn't just folks who wake up and think about they should have a coffee truck, but have a real business plan that has real potential to grow and scale, and fund them taking the leap and leaving the job that they're at, which, by the way, to be filled by somebody else, not destroying jobs, but to take a run at growing that next generation of great New Jersey companies. And we think AI is going to be a central focus of not just that program, but of the entrepreneurial future of the state. So we're doing a lot. The governor signed into law a tax credit program that supports job creation in artificial intelligence in particular. That's set to launch in a couple weeks. And we're going to continue to push forward on lots of different things. As Dave mentioned, the governor called this a moonshot, and I think it's appropriate. That's the appropriate scale of both the challenge, the opportunity, and the competitive dynamic of all this. Because yeah, New Jersey's up on our front foot, doing everything we can. I agree with Rob. We're partnering with lots of folks, but we're partnering where we can and competing where we should, because some of this is going to be a bit of a who gets there first, who gets there best, with regard to economic development and job creation and enterprise formation. And so things that we're doing around these early stage investments, these large scale investments are really, really important, and I think setting the stage for New Jersey's next 20, 50, 100 years of economic growth. So appreciate the chance to be here and chat with you all about this and talk about the future.
Senator?
Thank you, Mark. Thanks everyone for having me here. Thank you. Always a pleasure to be on campus. As I guess as the person single-handedly responsible for designating Central New Jersey on the map, I'm proud to be here in South Jersey. I don't know if there's any Central Jersey folks out here, but and I'm not wearing the owl, but I will next time I come to campus. That's a promise. I'm going to change the conversation a little bit in how I'm thinking about AI for New Jersey from both, because of my background in science, but also just as a legislator, and things that, both houses, both in the Senate and the Assembly with Assemblyman Moen and his colleagues, we are trying to think about the future. And for me, I think about both infrastructure, people infrastructure. Rob talked a little bit about, and Tim just talked about it. Also the power and computer infrastructure. Because of all these great advances that we want to have happen here in New Jersey, if that infrastructure isn't in place, and I'll elaborate on what I mean, then businesses are going to go elsewhere, and students are going to go elsewhere. And so thinking about sort of projecting into the future and what we can do from a public policy perspective is critically important, I think. And the other one, and Dave mentioned this in his keynote, is I do have deep concerns about privacy, deep concerns about algorithms making hiring decisions and inherent biases that Dave mentioned before. And what do we do from a matter of public policy around this to try to mitigate potential harms from AI, right? We're all rushing to hop on the AI bandwagon, but what are we trying to get to, and how do we try to ensure that we do it right here in New Jersey so that when Dave gets that question the next time, it's like, we have good programs, we have good infrastructure. So a couple things then to sort of peel away from all of that, right? So first, I'm curious, how many people, just raise your hand, have on your phone either ChatGPT or Claude or the equivalent? In this crowd, I mean, it's an easy question, right? I figured this, other crowds that might not have worked so well. So what you may not know, though, is if you ask Claude, hey, give me a recipe for blank, whatever it might be, and you ask Google the same question, you will use 10 times more electricity when you ask Claude or ChatGPT or any of the AIs than asking Google. Because of all of the machine learning that's happening, because of all those databases, because it's scraped the web. To what Dave talked about before, how it actually does it, right? Google just goes and tries to figure out which website is most popular, where recipes are, and gives you those top 10. Claude tries to figure out what you're actually asking, and then does that whole machine learning thing, and that takes a lot of energy. And so when you start going to what everyone just talked about, how do we make government better, local municipal government better, state government, county government better? How do we create jobs? How do we go ahead and put in place all of these innovations, we want to make sure that we have the energy infrastructure. And today, AI through, and really data centers overall, are consuming about 5% of New Jersey's electricity. And that is going to double within a few years under most projections. We are struggling here in New Jersey to make sure that our electrical grid is up to date, to ensure that we have enough power overall, and trying to keep the cost of utilities as reasonable as possible. Before you even get to the fact that AI is now, through the data centers in particular, going to drive that even harder. And so figuring out, and I won't go into all the details of how we want to address this, but figuring out how we can through things like ensuring that our electrical grid can carry more electricity. So before we even think about upgrading and replacing and adding to it, right? How can we make sure that we're putting in place power generation here in New Jersey, and there's about 80 projects ready to go right now that are struggling to get on the grid for a variety of reasons. Most of those are solar and battery, just ready to go. How do we put in place, and again, some of this will be public policy, some of this is just technology, get those into place so that we have the power that we need, right? These are really key things that we have to put in place over the next 200 and, what'd you say? 279 days, whatever it is, right? Because whoever the next governor is, want to make sure that we are setting that person up to continue all of this work. So that's one. Second is around the infrastructure question, people. I don't completely agree with something Tim said. I am both excited about the training that happens here at Rowan and in our 4 years. I'm excited about our 2-year colleges and how they can be even more nimble than our 4 years in trying to make sure that we leave no one behind when it comes to this AI economy. But I am concerned about job displacement because I just don't see how we can avoid some job displacement. The question is, are we going to have trainings in place so that those who are displaced either are at retirement age, so attrition occurs naturally and slowly, or there's retraining. And I worry very much that, again, from public policy perspective, that we will be behind the curve on this if we don't get moving quickly. I'll tell you a quick story. Years ago, this is not AI, I was at a Coca-Cola distribution plant watching these robots, look like bugs, not like people, go around and pick Coca-Cola products out. And in this case, all the pickers, the human pickers, had been replaced by robots. But the number of jobs at this distribution center had gone up because of the number of computer programmers and mechanical folks who had to repair all these robots. This is a few years ago, before they're not autonomous at that point. So in this case, small use case, it is true that the jobs went up, and because they were doing it gradually, and I asked them this question, they had let nobody go, and they had let natural attrition occur. But I have a close friend who's a radiologist. I've been friends with him since we were 5 years old. I'm convinced that his field is a dying field. He strongly disagrees with me. But I see no reason why it's not going to be doctors with AI assist, to AI with doctor assist, to one day, and not tomorrow, one day going, the computers are doing it better than a human being possibly could. So we've got, these are things, I don't have solutions for all of these, but these are things we have got to be ready to go on. In terms of other concerns, Dave mentioned it quickly and I said it, there is inherent biases in these. It's not just about hallucinations, thank you. I was hallucinating on that. It is liability issues. When we have fully autonomous vehicles, who's liable? Do we have laws in place for that? And we've already seen some tragedies in Arizona where a pedestrian a few years ago was hit and killed by an autonomous driving car. Where does liability lie? When hiring decisions are made by, if Monster.com, which receives 1 million resumes a day, is using algorithms to to decide that first step, and there are biases in there, who's responsible? And more importantly, of course, how do we ensure that we are removing those biases from automatic decision making? Facial recognition is another one. There's been lots of cases, right? Where now we're using facial recognition and AI technology to identify, it's always, every time it comes to us, the worst case, right? The worst of the worst. But what do we do about the fact that at least the current versions right now do have biases, do make mistakes, struggle still with skin tone? Do we shut it down? Or do we try to at least put some checks and balances on it? I would argue you don't shut it down because you want to stifle innovation, but of course we have to put checks and balances, I believe, on it, just like we would any other technology. The issue, of course, then becomes to do that legislatively is always tough. The legislative process occurs slowly for a reason. There are committee hearings and amendments and all these various things for a reason, right? You need to get 41 folks in the Assembly and 21 in the Senate and the governor to all agree that this is something good to do to get something turned into law. But AI, you're the innovators, is moving at the speed of AI. And so often, what good intention we try to do in the legislature is quickly out of date. And so, again, you've got to figure out how we can address all this. So I will end on one more use case and then open it up, I guess, to where we're going. Yeah. You heard from Rob in particular about how labor is using it to train employees. California is doing something really interesting that I'm looking to figure out how we can do here in New Jersey. And it's about overall how citizens can be more involved in government, right? So I'm not in Trenton today. Today's not a legislative day. But as you all know, right, we have hearings. Some of those hearings are video recorded. Some of those are audio recorded. But everyone has busy lives. And so California is now using AI to create transcripts automatically of legislative hearings. But where it gets even more interesting is the AI is able to identify the voices. And so it can say, hey, Senator Zwicker said X, Y, and Z, and then tie that to my votes or my bills or anything else. And they're using this so that citizens can get a better sense of what their legislature is doing and what their legislators are doing. And I think there's this enormous potential now to increase engagement when it comes to citizenry, just civic engagement, ways that we're just really getting to the tip of the iceberg. And so while I am concerned about a variety of different things, workforce displacement, electrical use, biases, I join everybody in terms of the enormous potential that I just want to see here in New Jersey. Last thing I'll say is, since Tim made the joke, right? You know, I spent 30 years working on the development of fusion energy at the Plaza Physics Laboratory. And the joke is, energy source of the future, always has been, always will be. But AI is actually changing that. Because for years now, not in the last couple years as we've all started thinking about AI, but for years, scientists working on the development of fusion energy have been using machine learning and artificial intelligence to design multi-billion-dollar machines and then to run simulations about how they would work. So instead of building multi-billion-dollar machines, we're running all these as simulations. That's not zero cost, but it's not billions of dollars, which means that we can quickly go through countless designs trying to accelerate, and we are accelerating, what the final design of a fusion reactor will look like. And I hope very much that in the near future we will see, and I think it's actually a realistic possibility, but a fusion pilot plant here in New Jersey in the next 10 years, and that will be because of AI. So let me stop there and thank you.
Great.
That was a promise. You've got the videotape right there.
That's there.
It knows who said it. So, right, when I go back to the Plasma Lab today, I'm probably in trouble, but that's a separate thing.
Thank you very much. Before we go to questions from the audience, just a couple quick follow-ups. Tim, is New Jersey's ability to attract data centers limited currently by our inability to connect to the electric grid and the fact that we're a net importer of energy compared to other states?
Yeah, great question. Glad I didn't get to talk about energy at all. I'm glad, Senator, I'm glad you brought it up. Mark, glad you're bringing it up as well. New Jersey has that challenge. The entire United States of America and the entire globe has that challenge.
Okay.
So real talk for a second. The shape of the curve of AI adoption is going to be governed more by anything else by utility prices. The politics of utility prices and AI adoption don't mix well at all, which is what the Senator was getting at, right? And there's not remotely enough, even if you think coal is the best thing in the gosh darn world and we should smoke every kilogram of coal we have. Oh, Jesus. Jesus Christ. Coal.
That's on tape.
That was on tape.
Yeah,
That's on tape.
Oh, Jesus Christ almighty. Coal. We should use every bit of it we have. There's not that much of it, first of all. And even if you turn down all of it, you'd have, some incremental generation. There's not remotely enough generation capacity in America, on the planet, to do all the things that sort of the models are suggesting for adoption of AI and computing power. I do have, by the way, an idea for how New Jersey could find 10 to 11 gigawatts of power generation. This happens to sit off our shores. Offshore wind represents an important part of the future in the mix. On the right terms, at the right price, with the right regulations, all that jazz, of course. But we're talking about controlling and importing less energy. Offshore wind continues to represent an extraordinary opportunity for energy generation, particularly as it relates to storage and batteries and how to supplement the grid. But yeah, no, we have everywhere in America has that problem. There's a lot of promises running around of, we're going to build, 20 gazillion, billion-dollar data centers around the country. They have the same challenges. I think they're in a bit of fake it till they make it mode, because no one has the incremental capacity that's going to either not massively disrupt grid stability or drive rates through the roof. And obviously, everyone's regulatory framework's a little different. Jersey's got PJM, and that's different than New York. That's different than Texas. It's different than other places. But the governing factor on how fast all this future emerges is going to be energy, and we do not have remotely enough of it anywhere from any source. Even if you don't care about renewables and sustainability, there's not enough of it.
Okay. I wanted to go back. I'm going to go back to the issue of job displacement. And I can ask about it in a different way. What a proportion of AI jobs are going to be high skilled, high tech jobs? What percentage are we talking about? Like the equivalent of a data entry. I was reading a book by our luncheon speaker talking about how a lot of the low cost AI work is being outsourced, like India and to other countries at pennies an hour. Is it a real mix that we're training for? And how do you think about education and workforce training for AI?
Real quick, I'll say on that, I do think it will be a job creator overall, but I certainly it has to be managed, and I certainly share Senator's fears. But also, I believe it's strong that we have to know to make the right choice, we need to know what we're measuring. So how do we know what job losses now are occurring because of AI? So we started doing a survey of unemployed workers, voluntary survey. It's not part of their application process. If they thought that their job loss or separation was because of AI. Around 10% are saying it, but that includes machine learning, and honestly, some folks don't even know what their separation was for. They don't know the real reasons. But I think it's a good baseline to have for us. But I don't think that is not a BLS stat or something. It's not. We don't know that's accurate. But I think it's good just to even see what the sentiment is. But I think Senator Wicker's story about the Coca-Cola facility before is a perfect one. And also, Senator Wicker and I work very closely on an apprenticeship program at Princeton Plasma Physics Lab, and I'll let him take the lead on that. But I think that sort of shows that even though you have these high-minded, cold fusion, the workers they needed were more technical and coming from the community college about maintaining all these things. So I think whether it be CoreWeave or whether it be a data center, there's going to be jobs surrounding all of that also. So whether they need to be trained in AI or they need to be trained in heating and cooling, it's all going to be jobs.
I'll just say quick, I think what Rob just said at the end is a really good point. So if you think about it, the engineers and the PhD computer scientists, yeah, they're going to push forward the next either innovation in how AI models are run and created, or they're going to figure out some sort of application and train an existing AI on that application. But everything else is not an advanced degree. Because if you're starting a company, you have your business folks and your art folks and everything else. What Rob was alluding to in terms of heating, like, why do data centers take up so much energy? In part because of the massive amount of cooling that they need. And so you're going to need electricians and HVAC folks. You're going to need, like the story I said, where you need folks who can just repair some of the things driven by AI, that Internet of Things that is also coming. And then the last thing, right, we, working in partnership with Rob and his team at Department of Labor, have created the first in its kind in the country apprenticeship program for the development of fusion energy machines. Because we already have the pipeline for the PhDs and for the engineers. What we didn't have was the pipeline for the people who are actually going to build these machines. And so in partnership with labor, we've created this, and it's now being imitated around the country, because whether you're building a fusion reactor or you're building some other complicated next 21st century device, who's got a wrench in their hand, and how is that different than how we used to do manufacturing? And so I think, Mark, it is a really good skill mix, and we just want to make sure that we're thinking about that. And I agree, we also have to understand what are the challenges before we try to solve them.
Okay. Okay. I just have one more question before we go to questions from the audience. New Jersey state government, I'm sure that other governments, have always had a difficulty trying to keep current with information technology. As Commissioner Sorangelo knows, when he was attempting to recruit cobalt engineers at the height of COVID, and we have a really difficult time procuring complex systems and staying on top of complex systems. I was almost hearing from Dave earlier that AI almost has the advantage over what we've done in the past, and that it can be done almost on an incremental basis. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, so actually yesterday I was at the Southern New Jersey Chamber of Commerce. This question came up from vendors around just how long it takes to even win a bid.
Yeah.
And one of the points that they focus on is that the Q&A periods can be incredibly long.
Yeah.
And sometimes the government doesn't even get to answering all the questions, and it can delay a procurement. So if we think back to that large data set feedback problem that AI can be good at solving, it can synthesize questions, it can suggest results based off of past information, it can standardize what patterns we're seeing in procurements from one agency to another, which makes it easier for vendors to apply. So I do think there are a lot of specific use cases embedded in procurement. It can, with the right conditions, help in other kinds of government processes as well. I think we've been very careful about not applying it to hiring decisions, not applying it to benefits determinations. But if it helps get information from people in the application process so that you make sure your application is full, it can reduce times. And actually, if I could share an example that Tim's team and my team have been working on, through many grant programs at EDA, you need to submit required documentation. One of the things that we're piloting now is, in the application process, can we use AI to look at the files that people attach and say, is this likely the tax certification certificate that you're supposed to attach? Because people sometimes do upload the wrong files. So those use cases can increase the processing time, which can increase then people getting the grant or the loan or whatever the program is much faster. So I do think there are lots of those process improvements throughout.
Just real quick, if I can, I love Dave talking about procurement reform, and that's something that I checked. It is 280 days left. It's something I'm super focused on because it's not sexy. Andrew, how many times, sorry, Senator, how many times have you got knocked on the door and someone asked you about procurement reform in government?
It's one of the biggest pinch points. Right? How many people have asked me? Oh,
Yeah.
zero.
Right.
Right. But it is one of the biggest pinch points.
Right,
Yeah.
but it's not sexy. It's not something you see in a campaign mailer. So I'm really focused on working with the front office, working with Dave's team. We have some outside help, some outside experts about what can we do about procurement reform, because quite frankly, far too often, state agencies are, the vendors have us over a barrel because there's only a few of them that have the patience to go through these long processes, the expertise to challenge bids or to put a bid in the first place. And I'm so thankful for Dave and his team helping us with the agile procurement. He talked about earlier for our unemployment insurance modernization, which is will always be ongoing, so always modernizing. But because of that process, it's been a way more successful application. And other things we're doing without that method have been, quite frankly, not successful. I'll just say that. I have my hearings coming up, Senator. But I think that's something that's very important. You see folks out in the ether, whether it be Ezra Klein or Jen Polka, talking about this sort of sludge in government, and so much of it has to do with technology and procurement.
Absolutely. Okay, we're in good audience questions now. Ari, I'm going to give you a mic. You two get to share. Oh, you've got one. Go ahead. Anyone in back? Ari, way in back. Thank you. Go ahead. There first, then you can keep going.
Hi there, Annika Van Rossum from Delaware Riverkeeper Network. So I just wanted to know, one of the big concerns we have with data centers where these AI models are going to be trained is that they use massive, massive amounts of water for cooling. I mean, a 10 to 50 query search on ChatGPT uses about a half gallon of water, and that has to be clean, potable water. It can't just be anything. So how are you looking at that as you're doing this, and how do you justify that with the current situation? And of course, talking about how the climate goals are really at risk because of the increase of these data centers. So how are you justifying that in the decisions you're making in using AI more?
Yeah, so there are a couple of pieces of legislation that have been proposed to address both of those, right? There is one that Senator Smith, the chair of the Senate Environment Committee, has, which would require data centers to have renewable energy to support everything that they are doing, right? And that is just out there as a proposal to get things started, but it is acknowledging the problem you're talking about and the overall climate issues, not just water. And then the other one, and I can't remember who's proposed this, but other states have been proposing this, is a separate rate structure for data centers. And I just, like I said, I don't remember who it is, but the idea being a couple things. One, protect, different than your question, protecting consumers so that we're not subsidizing this massive energy use. And then two, protecting the environment as you're referring to.
Go ahead.
If I could maybe just add something to what Tim had described before around the demand for data centers, to your point, and I appreciate it, and I think it's important to recognize its electricity consumption and also, as you said, clean water. I do think for all of us, particularly in a position of public trust and public policy, it's important to be skeptical about the way the technology evolves. And folks probably have been tracking an open source model now developed in China called DeepSeek. And it radically changes, at least for some folks in this community, the not only core resource concerns, but what the open source models can actually do. And what I think we'll see over time, as there's been more investment in these foundational models, and of course the best in class are still going to require a lot of resources, but those models can be used to train more efficient models and drive down the power consumption and ultimately the cost. So I think government does have a role in making sure that we're being very responsive to all concerns here, right? What the business community is looking for, our environmental obligations for our residents, but also think about ways that maybe technology patterns, and open source has been a huge part of many other technology evolutions, can be elevated to make sure that the playing field's equal there. Because ultimately, I think if we could get similar outputs and the good things we talked about with AI at a massive reduction in resource consumption, everybody would be happy with that. But the path that we're on right now, is driven by the leaders, and so they have their models that are going to be resource intensive.
Hello. I'm going to bring it down a level to talk about the labor force because I'm going to put my workforce development hat on, and I have my one-stop operator here with me. So I think what I heard you guys say is that every American worker is going to have to use or utilize AI in some capacity. And so how do we pace upskilling that workforce to be able to do that and embrace AI as a tool and not look at it as some kind of scary replacement for their job? Because that's where we are with the population we serve, and I think Rob knows what I'm talking about, but I mean, what pace do we do that at, and how can that be accomplished?
Is that Michelle in the back? Okay, I need glasses. I would just say a couple things. One, obviously we have the free resource of metrics learning, which you know all about for workers. But I think often, the other missing piece here is employers, right? We can't train every worker ourselves, especially if they're working for somebody else. So I think it's incumbent upon employers to help us with that upskilling. In my 7+ years as commissioner, I've been a little bit disappointed in the employer community for not doing more to upskill their own workers because they want to keep them where they are and not have them go somewhere else. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be working collaboratively in some fashion. There's certainly great players out there. I mentioned earlier in our industry partnership part about the employers we have at the table. But it's going to be incumbent upon them also to make sure they're training their workforce. So just real quick, I don't think we said that every worker has to use AI. I think that every worker is going to be affected by AI in some form or fashion. It doesn't mean they need to be trained on it, but they should certainly be aware of it. But I think it's certainly a challenge, Michelle. There's no doubt about that. And make sure that, but I think we have good partnerships here. Like every state's facing the same challenge, but we're going to make sure that we're in a good spot to have these resources available for workers.
I'll just say quickly, so I'm old enough that when I was in school, I learned how to type, not to word process, right? And there are all those headlines about how in the world are we ever, computers are going to make our lives so easy. We'll all just have leisure time. No one will have to work anymore. But also the question you asked, how are we even going to learn how to use these newfangled computers? And as you were asking that question, I was thinking about the fact that I just noticed this for me, and maybe other people have seen this. We spend so much time on Zoom. Zoom now has a built-in AI assistant that is automatically, if you choose to, just what you do is say yes, right? Give you a summary of the meeting and tell you the bullet points and tell you the action items. And so I think we're also going to see some of the larger tech companies put it into their systems in a way that is just going to be natural and intuitive. And it's sort of like the same, in my mind at least, if you drive an electric car and you have range anxiety, I think we also have AI anxiety in a lot of different ways. Much of it very warranted. And so I can see how technology and those companies are going to help in starting to socialize how AI can actually be a tool, but not in a threatening way that we're also worried about.
You all set? Other questions? Over here. Ari, a few up front. Oh, we'll move up front.
Hi, does New Jersey have any resources for the general public, not beyond what is available for state workers? Any kind of training or AI resources just to get the general public familiar with AI?
Yes, if you go to, I got the website here for you. I'm going to find it. I'll make sure I get it exactly right. Where'd it go? nj.metricslearning.com. So metrics is M-E-T-R-I-X. So nj.metrixlearning.com. There's free workforce trainings on there for any New Jersey resident. That was stood up during COVID. We had to switch to all virtual in the beginning. And we've been using it since then also for free trainings for any New Jersey worker. You think you need to register on there as well. But I think there's 4 or 5 different AI modules on there.
And just to add too, innovateus.org is the resource where the trainings that we put together for the government workforce are made available publicly to. Anybody in the public can use them, and we would also welcome feedback. There are topics there that are not just specific to public service, like workshops and such as well.
Okay. Next. Hands over here and over there. Okay. Trevor. That one first, then over here.
I just read in the semaphore this morning, since you're into forecasts, Andrew, that the UAE is creating laws with AI. So your forecast when we will be creating laws.
Creating laws.
The UAE is creating laws, or we're about to start creating laws.
How do you know I'm not doing that?
You may be. But here's another thing I just read from a well-known entrepreneur. 5 years from now, he's predicting, you can comment on it, a small town will become entirely agent-operated with AI systems, managing all municipal services, reducing local taxes by 44% while improving satisfaction ratings by 71%. Any predictions on when that might become a reality or a partial reality?
Fusion's going to happen first.
Yeah. Is there a home rule in that small town?
Can I just say, Jim, your first part of your question, you said, well, aren't you using AI to write laws? So ChatGPT is much better at writing something close to New Jersey statutes than Claude is. I've tried them both. I am getting ready to introduce in the near term the New Jersey 3 Laws of Robots Act. But that'd be fun to do, right? Some people got that joke. iRobot. But Jim, it's like anything else. Back to my comment before about some of the anxiety. There was, questions that people posed. Well, why didn't the word processor do what all the hype was saying it was going to do? Why didn't we have all this leisure time? And the answer was, when there was a typewriter, a business letter on average was typed 1.5 times, right? Because remember, if you're old enough, you remember the little white out, and I was the one who learned on like the little ball that turned and had the little thing that went up. Some people are nodding, they know what I'm talking about, and the young people are like, I have no idea what he's saying. But what happened, right? Instead of 1.5 times, after word processing, a business letter, this is older data, so I don't know if this is still the right number, was 7.5 times that it was edited. So all we did was email it back and forth and have too many cooks in the kitchen, and the amount of time it took to get a business letter out didn't change. So I think fusion will happen first.
Go ahead.
I miss the smell of white
All right.
In the morning.
Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Very valuable panel. My name is Andy Bala. I'm a startup founder, biotech. We're trying to save more lives. People dying in hospital, close to 500,000 people die because of sepsis infection. In prior life, I worked for Johnson & Johnson for close to 2 decades. So my question is, I think it is already in work, should be in the works based on what Senator just responded. There has to be a framework, a guideline or guardrail kind of framework to assess bias, risk because of the AI introduction and adoption. It is going at a very high speed. Thanks, Commissioner, for explaining where the AI is introduced, the fast pace the workforce is adapting. But I'm sure it is in works, Senator. I don't want to think that nothing is being done in the legislature. But I'm curious when a framework, such a framework, simple, easy to follow, not bureaucratic, right, will be introduced in New Jersey. Thank you.
Of the guardrails for
So there's the frame, right. So there's a bunch of proposals that are already out there, including ones that I have done, now not making a joke. Right, and so for instance, just around that automated decision making, I introduced that a couple of years ago, and I keep on updating it so that it remains relevant and keep on working to get it through the legislative process as one example, right? So you talked about sepsis. Of course, if you had AI in helping you identify sepsis before it occurs, you want to make sure from your perspective, of course, that there, no bias in it, that it won't miss it for male versus female or whatever it might be. So we are working on that rapidly, knowing full well that companies like yours are all rising up. And I guarantee you, every time I meet with an AI company, nobody tells me that they have bias in their results, right? They all tell me that they're the good ones, and those are the ones that I have to, regulate. Because there's also that part, right? No one wants me to actually try to regulate them. So it's a balance.
If I could jump in, agreeing with everything Senator Zwicker said. I think we're at this, and this risk being pessimistic, I'm usually a pretty big optimist, but this risk being pessimistic, rules of the road, guardrails, what have you, regulations, even if we get to that. Doing that 50 states at a time, that's not a great way to go. I'm also not particularly optimistic that Washington is, let's say, focused on this right now. And if they do, I'm concerned about how that would work. But that's a bipartisan comment. That's not exclusively the new administration or leadership in either chamber. There's not a real groundswell of leadership in Washington to solve these questions the right way. So I'm sure New Jersey would regulate it the best, but Pennsylvania's not terribly far from here. Whatever California does will matter. So having a patchwork quilt of rules of the road is going to be tricky as well. So it may end up in and I'm not optimistic about this either. Does something like a lead standard industry-driven approach emerge? Maybe. Is it any good to the senator's point? Maybe not. I don't know. But those questions need answering, and I'm afraid we're in a sort of a leadership deficit nationally on this.
I'm happy to be partisan. No, I would say quickly, I have this same conversation with folks all the time. Senator, don't do this, don't do this. We don't want a 50-state solution. We're a national and we're an international company, right? I get it. And so I tell everyone the same thing. I will put a poison pill in any piece of legislation that I pass at the state level that says wipe it out if it happens at the federal level. Because I know it's not happening at the federal level. But of course, that's the case. I also look at what the around this, to your question before, the Europeans are way ahead of us when it comes to what a regulatory framework will look like. Whether it's the right, to Tim's point, whether it's the right framework, whether it is stifling innovation, allowing innovation, protecting people, a lot of big questions there, but they're doing it. And we, to your point, we've got to start doing it.
I would really like to thank our panel for a great wide-ranging discussion of the policy implications of AI and what New Jersey can do, and hopefully you will all talk to whoever the two nominees are after June and make sure we're continuing to maximize New Jersey's potential in this field. Thank you very much. We're going to take a 15-minute coffee break. Also, a telephone was found in a bathroom. Ari has the phone, I believe, if anyone is missing your phone. So thank you very much. I will see everyone back here at 11:05. Thank you. You guys are great. Thank you so much. Really.
Good morning. I'm happy to introduce today's panel on how AI is transforming business and academia. I'm Yolanda Mack. I'm the Associate Dean of Industry Partnerships and Workforce Development for the College of Engineering. And I'm having a little bit of a technology whiplash. I think I can speak for myself and most of those on the panel. We grew up without the internet, without even personal computers. As we grew up, personal computers came in. Okay, great, we started to get used to that. Then the internet became a thing, and that was kind of a big deal, and changed how we lived our life. And we thought, that's great. And now we're here at the cusp of AI transforming our lives again. We just can't catch a break. It's just nonstop everything. But that means that we're in a good place. We're used to things changing. We're used to things moving. And so we are confident we can lead the next phase of AI. I've got this great panel representing IT services, global industry, and academia. We're going to start talking about how AI is reshaping organizations, how we build a new ecosystem that adapts to these changes and innovation, and what does this mean for New Jersey's competitive edge. I'd like to start first with Nidal Boyanaya. Nidal is Rowan's Associate Vice President for AI, a tenured professor of electrical and computer engineering, and director of the Machine, Artificial Intelligence, and Virtual Reality Center. Her research focuses on machine learning and artificial intelligence, supported by funding from the National Science Foundation, National Institutes of Health, Federal Aviation Administration, and the U.S. Army. She is also the co-founder of an FDA-cleared startup that leverages AI to improve oncology outcomes and treatment response, and is the founder of Deep AI Solutions, an IBM protege startup providing trustworthy AI solutions to government and industry. And Nadal's AI prediction for the future is that AI will redefine fundamental aspects of human life, from our jobs and institutions to our relationships and norms, and this future will be what we make of it through wise governance and conscientious adaptation. All right, Nadal.
Hey. Thanks, Yolanda. So I'm going to talk today, I'm going to focus on academia, how AI can save education. Next. So my presentation is going to be a demo, actually, for you. So I have here are some statistics, basically, to say that AI is already here. It is changing our lives from voice assistants to diagnostics, actually. It is changing the way we live, we work, we learn, and we educate. The statistics are staggering, right? I got these a couple of days ago. 77% of companies are using or exploring the use of AI. 83% of them are claiming that AI is a top priority for them. 85% of Fortune 500 companies use AI to shape their future. And in the next 3 years, 92% of companies plan to increase their AI investment. A McKinsey report actually shows that AI has the opportunity of a $4.4 trillion, in a sense, growth. Google CEO actually compares AI as a technology that is more profound than fire and than electricity. So next, so I'm going to tell you why AI is transforming education. So here, I made in about 5 minutes an AI teaching assistant for a class. This class here, I simply uploaded 20 lectures. It's a machine learning course, 20 lectures. And can we go, George, please, to the, yeah. And that QR code is actually so students can scan the QR code, take them to this link directly, and they can ask any questions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week about this course. So let's ask a question. So can you please type, hey, Miles, summarize lecture 1 for me? And then we're going to talk to it. Here we're going to type, and then we're going to talk. Okay? So it's a machine learning course. It's going to summarize lecture 1. There's quite a bit of math. There is equations and math. Lecture 1 is introduction to basically linear classifiers and the perceptron. Here, the main idea. So it's summarizing lecture 1, key concepts, learning task setup, model selection problem. That I wish I picked some social science class. So this can be applied to any class, not only. Sorry, you will see equations, linear classifiers. Okay, it's summarizing basically the lecture. All right. Let's see. Later on, it's going to ask. It should ask if this is okay, or do you need a visual explanation? Would you like to go over the perceptron update rule in more detail, or maybe try a quiz question from this lecture? Can you please type, let's try a quiz, So it's going to give the student a quiz. And this is the AITA. Let's try a quiz.
And I learned about perceptrons in grad school. I learned quite a bit differently than this is presenting to us today.
All right, so this is the quiz, right? Suppose you're using, I think it should give a multiple choice quiz, okay? No multiple choice. Take your time. Just, yeah, here, George. Can you give me a multiple choice, right? Okay, let's see. Okay. So it's giving the student a quiz. Choices. Let's do something random, George. Just put anything. Let's say A. Okay, close, not quite. And then it gives the explanation, basically, right? It explains why the answer is wrong. Now we're going to type. Can you write the quiz for me in any language? In Arabic. Arabic. All right. Can you write the quiz for me in Arabic? You will be أكيد. أكيد. Sure. Okay. Perceptron. Correct or not, Nawal? What do you think? No, badly. Okay, I'm going to ask Amin, correct or not? It is correct. All right. And then the last says, ما هو اختيارك? What's your choice? All right. So you can actually answer in English. Oh, well, here it's multiple choice. So let's write it in C. I choose exactly right, C. It will keep responding in Arabic. You will have to tell it, there you go. You answer in English, it will. Now, the course that I uploaded is my English machine learning course, right? No other. We can ask it to summarize for us in Chinese, in any language you want. We can communicate back and forth in any language you wish. Although, like, this is what I uploaded is 20 lectures on machine learning. Actually, it's the MIT Open Course Machine Learning PDFs. All right, now, we're gonna, speak. So we can actually speak to it. So let's see. Hey, Miles, can you summarize the lecture for me, but really very briefly, in Chinese? No, hold on. I need to restart it, because. So this is my phone. I'm the student. Hey, Miles, do you hear me? Connection failed. Okay. Hey, Miles, do you hear me?
Loud and clear. I'm all ears. Well, virtual ones. You ready to keep going with lecture 1 or feeling like switching things up?
Okay, why don't you very briefly summarize lecture 2 for me, but in Chinese?
It's thinking, using all of that cooling water to
当然可以。第二讲的是感知机算法，它是一种用于训练线性分类器的方法。算法的核心是只在分类出错时更新参数，通过逐步调整权重向量 theta 来更好的分类数据。重点，每次只在错误样本上更新参数 theta just yt xt， 如果数据是线性可分的，感知机会在有限步数内收敛，收敛速度和分类间隔有关。
makes perfect sense.
Okay, now switch to English. I'm really tired. Can you tell me a joke, Miles? I'm tired. Tell me a joke. I said it to switch to English. Did you hear me? I did something. Miles? Listening. All right, tell me a joke. I'm tired. It's not listening, really. Sorry, I'll have to restart it. And by the way, everything it said, it was transcribing it on my phone. I'm really tired now. Can you tell me a joke?
All right, just to help you power through. 为什么机器学习模型很少去开队？因为他们害怕过拟合社交场景。
Obviously hilarious.
That was a bit nerdy. Want to rest now or do one quick
quiz? It did not
quiz
hear
and
me
strong?
say, let's switch. It keeps the original. All right, can we switch to English? Tell me the joke in English.
You got it. Why don't machine learning models go to parties? Because they're afraid of overfitting to the social scene. Want one more laugh or a little quiz before you call it a night?
You know what? My boss is actually an industrial engineer. Can we explain overfitting for her, for an industrial engineer? Make it simple so we can explain overfitting to her in English.
Absolutely. Let's make it super clear. Overfitting is like designing a custom machine that perfectly handles a very specific batch of parts, but breaks or jams when you give it anything slightly different. In machine learning, it means the model learns the noise and quirks of the training data too well, instead of the general patterns. So it looks great on training data, but fails when new data shows up. It's like building a conveyor belt for exactly one day's production, not thinking about how the next batch might vary. Think she'd get that analogy?
Yes, she did. She did get it. Thank you. How about if I have to explain it to a social scientist?
Awesome. Now let's switch gears for a social scientist. You can say, overfitting is like interviewing a small group of people and then thinking all humans think and behave exactly like them. Your conclusions might match that group perfectly, but they won't hold up in the real world with more diverse perspectives. In machine learning, it's the same. A model that fits the training data too closely won't generalize well to new cases. It memorizes instead of understanding. Think that would click with her?
Yes, it will. Thank you. I'm going to have some rest now.
You've earned it. Great job today. Rest up, and I'll be right here when you're ready to pick things back up. Sleep well.
Nadal's boss says they're going to chat later about this.
So every professor can create this AI TA simply by uploading their course material. I've worked out the template. There is some prompting that I can share with everyone, but you just upload your syllabus and your course material. The model will not hallucinate. It will stick to the course content. There's a technology behind it called the RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, that is done in the background. And so the user, you simply drag and drop your course material, PDF, OCR, Excel files, whatever, and we will get this AI TA for students. All the students need to do is click on that QR code. That's it. It's free for them. And it costs $20 a month. Can we go? I think I'm done, basically.
Okay. Thank you, Nadal.
I have one last, yeah. So basically here I have, with everything, right, with all of this promise of AI, there are still risks. My colleagues talked briefly about these risks. I'm not gonna go in details through them, but basically there's the issue of privacy, right? Bias and fairness, we talked about that. Adversarial attacks, we touched on that, and the issue of transparency, right? There's still a lot of work to be done. Rowan's strategy, as I speak as the AVP for AI at Rowan, our strategy is that we recognize that AI ethics should be an integral part of our AI strategy. And basically, our approach is to implement guardrails, transparency, and a responsible and ethical AI.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back and ask some questions later, but I'd like to move along to Anthony Mongeluzzo. Anthony Mongeluzzo is a tech innovator, entrepreneur, and the CEO of PCS, a company he founded in 2000 while attending Rowan University. Under his leadership, PCS has grown to 250 employees across 8 states and has been recognized as one of the fastest growing companies in the US. A trusted media authority, Anthony has been Fox TV's go-to IT expert in Philadelphia. His expertise is sought after by national and regional outlets, including the Wall Street Journal, the Associated Press, ABC, NBC, MSNBC, CNBC, and the Philadelphia Business Journal, where he regularly shares his knowledge on IT trends and business strategies. Anthony's AI prediction of the future: over 60% of our manual tasks will be replaced by AI within the next 4 years.
Well, thank you. With all the media stuff, I actually started here at Rowan University in '98 as a radio, TV, film major, and now we're here from AI. So yeah. Another interesting fact about Rowan, if my slides stay up. Oh, there we go. I actually started my company, Pro Computer Service, PCS, as a junior here, and I remember my friends laughing at me, basically saying this will never be successful. What are you doing fixing residential computers? And it turned obviously into a good business. Once a slide comes up, I'll give you a quick stat. But as they're doing that, as you reminded us that we're old and we didn't have personal computers, my first business was actually when I was 15 years old. Does anyone here remember bulletin board systems? The old dial-up, I got a head shaking there. So I actually had a bulletin board in Philadelphia. We were pretty elite, 6 nodes, Telnet, things like that, but it looks not too technical these days. So next slide. Oh, sure. Okay. If this doesn't work, I'll just call next slide. So just a quick snapshot on PCS. Mostly New Jersey based, but we've been expanding through the tri-state and in Florida. We employ about 250 plus team members, and obviously being in the business our 25th year, I think the company has changed probably 5 or 6 times and will change again. So let's go to the next slide. So what we're looking to do at PCS is really show our customers, show ourselves what to do with AI, right? The first thing that people hear or think when they see AI is, oh, we're going to lose jobs, we're going to replace people. My goal and the goal of PCS is to be more efficient, so it might require less hiring, but it's not going to replace one single job. We're using AI to empower our team members and basically turn very smart people into smarter people with the right tools. So let's head to the next slide, and I'll give you a scenario that we're using where it's a real world thing. So we get, on average, probably about 1,500 calls a day, right? So that could be technical questions, it could be accounting, it could be sales, it could be you name it. Well, one of the things that we always do for quality control is we have our smile back, which when a ticket closes, you rate your experience. We do what we call happy calls every Friday, but that's all human tests. What if a call is going bad? Unless you're right next to the person or you can see the mannerisms, you really don't know. So what we did, and I thought it was pretty innovative, pre-AI, we had a couple team members spending a few hours a day, every day, 5 days a week, listening to calls on the phone system. We are getting such a small percentage by doing that. It was helpful, but it really wasn't the way. So now let's fast forward to about a year and a half ago. Let's go to the next slide. So now we have real-time call monitoring through our phone system. So every call, when it comes in, it's actually looked at. So let's hit it one more time. So what we actually see, which is really incredible, is we get a live sentiment. How is the call going? Now, the one thing that's great about PCS is our teams are small, right? Even though we have a lot of people, we do a lot of service, our teams are no smaller than 7, no larger than 9, so you have that same company feel. So now the leader of each team in real time has a dashboard, and as long as all those faces are happy, we're good, right? Now, if it starts turning, you have to listen to the call, right? We deal with folks in all industries, and sometimes a happy word might be a curse word, right? They're having fun. AI might pick up on that and go, there's a little language being said. It's like, oh, well, that's John. That means he's happy, so we're good. So there is still that human element with things, but it's allowing us to really review so much more data and really, we use it as a scoring system for our team members. You could see consistently who has, the better calls. The other interesting thing in our world, we support a lot of customers. Most of them have, pretty, I'll call it mainstream systems. But you'll also get clients that have a homegrown system, right? It might not be supported by Microsoft or Apple or any vendor. Well, we have experts for those customers that we dial in. So for instance, I'm gonna make something up because in case anyone uses one of the vendors, I don't want to say anything bad, but we'll call it soup, soft soup. Well, if the AI software hears soft soup, it then goes to the engineers that know that platform and like, hey, just a heads up, you might have a call coming your way because they're talking about that on the other end. So now imagine, as opposed to possibly screening 25, 30 calls a week, we're screening tens of thousands a week, and here's the other great part. We're a 24/7 operation, so we could get calls any time of the day. Those calls are also being screened, and I could tell you, midnight to 8 a.m., 7 a.m., those calls were never screened. So let's go on to the next one. So this is just some of the dashboards that we could see in real time. You could customize the dashboards. We're always looking for the competitive advantage. So did that person that was reviewing the calls, or those two people for 2 hours a day, did they lose a job? No. Now they're converted to aggregating all this data, looking at it, looking at trends. And we have an internal university, PCSU, where we actually train our technicians with formal classes. So guess what? Now we could figure out the folks maybe that are scoring maybe that B when we want to get them to an A, and we could bring them to that class that Oliver leads to give them, a little better phone skills. Let's go to the next one. Should be, I believe, just another dashboard so we could move through that fast. But as you can see right there, go back real fast, I'm sorry. Just the one, that's the other thing they see. See that middle one guy right there? That's a call that our TSC, which is our team lead, is going to pop in and look at because it's flagged for whatever reason. So they got to go in there, they got to look at that. On to the next one. So the other thing that we'll do, and this will really be the second case study because we got a lot of great people, talk about different things. So one of the things that we do that's outside of our normal day-to-day IT is we do global incident response. So when you see those companies getting hacked, pipelines going down, we get brought in by the insurance companies, and it could be global, right? Now, this is a down situation, right? They're trying to recover data. They're trying to figure out how they got in. It's a disaster. Companies are now hardening thanks to insurance requirements. They're actually making businesses do things that they don't want to do necessarily, but they need to in terms of security. So one of our team members, for instance, might have to write a 70-line code, Python script or PowerShell, because we got to automate all these functions, right? And anyone in IT, right? It's like back in the day, you never closed the computer case till you turned it on and tested it, right? So you write this long script, command failed. What's going on? They look at it, the humans look at it, they send it to a friend. Guess what? Now we throw it into chat, we throw it in the Grok, we throw it into an AI program, and the software's like, oh, you have an extra space on line 63. Want me to fix that for you? A human being might have spent an hour, 2 hours trying to find that. Try proofreading your own email, try proofreading your own work. You just need that extra set of eyes. And when that data, you're looking at the screen all day, this is where it superpowers the systems. One of the things we were talking about, these ticketing companies, if you email a ticket in, they're now going to the technicians and going out to your database, like inside your network. You don't want it obviously going out to the web and sharing it. But it could look at past tickets. It could look at former resolutions and actually make suggestions in the internal notes. So while this is advancing very quickly, I also think it's going to advance much more quickly over the next year or so. And what I would say to everyone, just as a final thought on my end, I've gotten less technical over the years as the team has grown, and I'm like, I got some great engineers. We're going to let them learn it all. Everyone needs to know AI at some level. The amount of function that it could have helping you in your life, going through different things, if used properly, it's a time saver. But like everything, I always say with AI, don't trust and verify, because sometimes it will give you results that might not be true. So keep eyes wide open with it. So I will pass it on from there.
Thank you, Anthony. And I have to say, I'm relieved to hear that I, as a human, no longer have to read emotions, that we've got the AI to do that for us. Now I'm going to move on to Timothy Gwim. Tim Gwim is the founder and CEO of PCH Technologies, a leading security-first IT managed service provider headquartered in Sewell, New Jersey. After earning his computer science degree from Drexel University, he grew the business from a one-person operation into an award-winning SOC2 certified company that provides a full range of IT and cybersecurity services. A prominent figure in the IT managed service provider sector, Tim serves on advisory boards for HATS AI, Quark, and INKY Technology. Recently, Tim has been at the forefront of the industry by introducing an AI as a service model aimed at promoting the secure adoption of AI solutions within the small and medium-sized business sector. His AI prediction, in the next 3 to 5 years, 80% of level 1 help desk tickets will be handled by autonomous AI agents.
Great, thank you, Yolanda. So my presentation today is going to be really, hopefully, very practical. And I was thinking, Tom Bianco talked about how municipal government could use AI. And I work with small to medium-sized businesses, between 20 and 500 computers typically. And the things that I'm going to go over today can apply to everybody in regards to adopting AI successfully and safely. A little bit about myself, Tim Gwim, similar to Anthony, I actually went to Drexel University. I started the company in college. He went to Rowan, I went to Drexel.
So we're going to boo Drexel, right?
No, you don't boo Drexel. There's a lot of Drexel people here at Rowan. So anyway.
I thought it was home field.
So anyway, you know, it's something that I hope is very practical and everybody in the audience can really enjoy. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I've been through the invention of the internet, through dial-up, through the invention of email, through the invention of smartphones. It's very transformative as far as a moment in time. With AI now, with generative AI, it's going to be even faster. The changes that happen and how quickly it happen. You know, if you look at one of the things you look at is Blockbuster. You know, everybody was going to Blockbuster, renting their videos. High-speed internet came out. They weren't prepared for video on demand. They thought it was fantasy. It was never going to happen. And next thing you know, a year later, they're basically all out of business. So I think you've got to really think about AI. It is going to change the world. Some people are going to adopt it very successfully. Others not so much, and people are going to put their head in the sand and ignore it at all. And those, you really have to understand that it's coming, and you need to look at it and take action on it. Can we go to the next slide, please? So when I speak about AI, I divide it into 3 areas. First one is human-only tasks, things like medical diagnosis, human resource management, managers, owners of companies, leaders, and also another human-only task, especially people that write blogs and things like that, is that you want to make sure that you don't use a generative AI tool that will take a copyright if you use some of that work in things you're doing. So I make writing, everything I do writing-wise, I do it myself. I don't use any generative AI because I'm going to retain that copyright to anything that I write. Second thing that most people in the room we talked about mostly today is AI as a co-pilot. That is when you're talking about ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, AI tools built into Salesforce or different applications you use. Those tools are co-pilots, are assisting you to to create more content faster or do things better and being a helper. And that's where most AI today is. Last area is completely automated AI. And you could go, we talked about it earlier about Tesla, self-driving cars, AI phone agents, things that are completely built that do not require human intervention. And going back to your RAG example, you have the guardrails that you're not going to make a mistake. It's not going to hallucinate because you have just that data, and it doesn't know any more answers. It's not going to take any leaps of faith in what it's doing. So those are the 3 areas of AI, just to kind of set a framework of what I'm going to discuss further. All right, go to the next slide, please. So my stats are a little different. This is a small business space. Right now, it's a small survey size. Areas that SMBs are using is content marketing, social media, and customer relations. This is from Q2 24. There isn't a newer study that I could find. 39% are using AI, 54% do not use AI now, and 7% don't know. I think those numbers today are a little bit higher than those numbers. And what small business think they can do is they can offload tasks, they can get more time back, and help them with, not hiring more people, being able to use AI instead of that. Can we go to the next slide? So this is another slide about the projected time savings. So more than half of the SMBs surveyed said they could save at least 20 hours a month using AI as a co-pilot to help them along with their daily work. Can we go to the next slide? Cost savings. More than 50% look at saving between $500 and $2,000 a month of actual cost savings by using AI. Go to the next slide, please. Reasons given not to adopt AI. Number one, we heard it earlier today, don't trust AI, don't know where to begin. And if you look at the slide, do not trust AI, older than 50 years, there's more people that do not trust it, in this generation because they're not familiar with it, obviously. And it's almost half do not know where to begin, basically 50-50. I think it's right not to trust AI completely. You need to understand a lot about how it's built, what it's using. But I think not knowing where to begin, I think we owe a service, not only the academia, but small businesses. They need to invest in training to teaching their workforce educate them on AI and how it can actually be used effectively. So I think that's everybody's, not only academically, but also the workforce needs to kind of work in that area. We go to the next slide. So for about the past year, I've been working very closely with our businesses, we focus on construction, manufacturing, and financial companies. I'm in business 27 years, from a technical background to a business background. And I'm looking ways to successfully get AI in the businesses. And the approach that I found is that you have to have a crawl, walk, run. There's some visionary CEOs out there that they want to automate everything, they want to make it all work. You can't make that happen overnight. You really need to take your time and understand the requirements of AI. You have to crawl, walk, then run. Some people don't even know about it, so they have to crawl because they don't know what's even possible. And this is the way I've seen it being successfully adopted in companies we work with over the past year. Go to the next slide. So to get it adopted properly, there's a two-way approach, because there's already people in your office right now, whether you're a small business or you're a small government, that there are people using ChatGPT to work on their jobs to make it easier. They may not be using it securely, but they're actually using it in order to be effective. They are basically your people that are advocates for AI. And one of the things I talk about, one of the most important things to have from a small business or even government is having an AI acceptable use policy. And the first thing you want to have around that is having approved tools that are secure. Because let's imagine you're an accounting firm and you want to do some tax analysis on my particular personal tax return, and you upload it into the free version of ChatGPT, you basically put my personal information, you violated my confidentiality into an actual thing. And your employer, or if your employees, if you don't set that policy and tell them, they say, well, you never set an AI policy. I thought I could use whatever tool's there. So that's the number one thing you need to look at. And the policy would be this simple: no AI use at this company. It's that simple to get started. And that way there's no question about it until you can do the other things about creating an acceptable use policy, which we'll go over in a minute, how to train your employees, have approved tools that are actually secure. So that's the C-level area of it. But once you have that in place, then you can leverage these workers that are using AI to teach the other workers to be more effective and to be able to be effective and get AI adopted inside the company. So these are the hallmarks. These are not all the parts of an AI acceptable use policy, but the first one is users need to understand what the roles and responsibility in using AI. What secure tools are they approved to use? And that can change over time. And one of the roles inside the company is a person that manages what AI tools that are coming and going. So that's important to manage. As AI grows, more and more tools are going to be coming out. So you need to have somebody that's approving these tools in addition to using them. The protection of the confidential data. You need to make sure you're using a tool that's basically secure. You can't make a mistake. Let's say you're an attorney, and then you upload a very confidential piece of document into OpenAI and ChatGPT. You can't just call up Sam Altman, hey, I need that document back. I made a mistake. You know, that's you've broken your NDA. You're kind of out of luck at that point. Another area, protection of intellectual property. I'm going to use Coke as an example. Let's say I'm a young engineer. I want to make the Coke formula basically taste better or make it even better. So I go to ChatGPT. I put the secret Coke formula in. And all of a sudden, the Coke formula is now on the, in the public domain. So you also protect your own intellectual property as your client's confidential data. We talked about ethical use. Obviously, you don't want to use AI to create bias in any capacity, especially if you're doing things with HR hiring. You want to make sure that anything you do is very, very measured. Also, obviously, not creating code or ransomware or phishing emails would be another violation of AI ethical use. The other thing I talked about very early about writing, that if your company does use AI, make sure you understand that if you use AI, are you going to lose copyright to what you're using? You got to read the very, very fine print of privacy policies, things like that. So I think that's important. And the last piece, which the penalty for breach of policy, I think that you as an employer and organization have to really train your team and your employees. This is how you use AI. But if you use it the wrong way, there has to be a stern policy because you can't get the confidentiality back. I think that's also an important area to define out in an AI acceptable use policy. All right. So getting started, shaking the tree. You're going to find your AI explorers in your company, the ones that are using it now effectively. Look for use cases that are low-hanging fruit. Measure the time and time savings, financial impact, customer service improvements. Some of the things that we've seen our clients use it for specifically are, one is an RFP responder for state contracts. Usually there's a lot of paperwork you have to kind of go through. So we're able to train an secure AI engine on how to respond to the RFP with about 80% of the information. That's one in our construction clients. Our manufacturers are using it to look at comparison of materials when they have to order supplies in order to better forecast things that they need to do. We have other clients that are using it for marketing, marketing posts, email posts, things like that. We have one client that didn't believe me that there was people using the free version of ChatGPT. We wrote a script, one of our engineers, and showed him that there was a 200-person company, 50 people were using it on a daily basis with over 1,500 queries. And they didn't know what information they were putting in there. And this company also has a subsidiary in Japan, so we're able to leverage AI and also do the language translation from English to Japanese. And one thing to note, too, is that certain large language models do things better. For example, Claude is better at translating than the traditional ChatGPT. And each one of them have their own positives that you want to look at. So that's some things about shaking the tree. Move on to the next slide. So my closing thoughts on it, on how if you're serious about AI for your company or your business or yourself, is start now. Adopt the AI acceptable use policy, put the secure tools in place, and to get started with it, to be really good at AI, you really got to commit 30 days to it. It's kind of like exercise. You have to get started, and you got to do it every day because there's this, it's called prompting. When you're talking to ChatGPT, we did some prompting earlier, and you'll get better over time, and you'll figure out new ways to use it over and over again. Again, shake the tree, continue to innovate, and continue to rinse and repeat. And I think that is a way that you can get AI successfully adopted in your organization.
Thank you, Tim. There's a lot to consider when it comes to AI and implementing them in business. A lot of things to think about. I'd like to move now to Julian Bush of Siemens. Rowan University is doing a lot of excellent work with Siemens, from technology development, curriculum development. They've been a really great partner. Julian Bush is a senior key expert for AI at Siemens Foundational Technologies, based in Princeton, New Jersey, with a PhD in computer science from LMU Munich University and over 9 years of experience in AI research. He is driving research and development for industrial artificial intelligence to bridge the real and the digital world. And his AI prediction Within the next 3 to 4 years, AI assistants will increasingly augment manufacturing roles, making AI literacy and adoption essential to addressing looming workforce shortages and maintaining competitiveness.
Thank you, Yolanda, for the introduction. I would like to follow up on my colleagues with a perspective on industry and specifically how today's generative AI technology can help to transform industry and make things better. Okay, next slide, please. Before I do that, I would like to introduce our company a little bit in case you don't know Siemens very well, what we are doing. And I think the best way to do that is to state our purpose, which is that we aim to create technology to transform every day for everyone. Next slide, please. And to do that, we engage in a number of core businesses. One is digital industries, manufacturing, automation systems, things like that, which I will also go in a little bit deeper in the following. Smart infrastructure, buildings, data centers, power grids, mobility, trains, rail infrastructure, and also healthcare, things like MRI machines, lab diagnostic systems, and things like that. I'd also like to highlight our foundational technologies unit, which is our Siemens internal R&D unit, which I'm a part of, where a lot of innovation around AI for these different businesses is happening. We are present here in Princeton. We have our R&D hub here, and we also have our industrial AI lab. If you ever like to come visit us, we have a lot of demos there that we can show you and start co-creating together. Next slide, please. Yeah, since we try to transform the everyday through technology, we naturally invest a lot of resources into R&D, and we strategically engage in research and innovation ecosystems like this one right here in New Jersey. Next slide, please. Yeah, today I would like to talk about generative AI in industry, and this is all motivated by different trends that we observe happening in industry. For example, we have more and more complex customer demands. Customers want to build new things. They want to build them fast. We have globalization and volatile markets. Supply chains get disrupted, and we need to be robust against that. We have growing sustainability requirements. Generative AI models, ChatGPT, they are all very resource intensive. They need a lot of power and a lot of water for cooling, and this is something that we need to take into consideration. And we are faced with a lack of talent, with a looming workforce shortage, and we make sure that we can navigate around that. So a lot of challenges are derived from that. We need to improve our production. We need to be faster. We need to be more flexible. We need to be scalable, and we need to be attractive to the workforce. Next slide, please. Here's an example of a production line that you can see, and a lot of challenges that arise around it. For example, just to name a few, we need to detect bottlenecks in our production where things are not going as fast as they should be, so they hold up the whole line. There are problems that are very difficult to figure out. Maybe if you have something happening like right there in the back of the line, and its symptoms are manifesting more in the front, it can be very difficult to debug that for an operator and to really find out what the problem is. You have to do complex root cause analysis and trace problems back through very, very complex structures. And in the middle of all of that is the human operator who is standing at the machine, who is controlling the line, who needs to stay on top of all of these things and be empowered to solve problems and keep productivity high. Next slide, please. And how do we do that? How can we enable our workforce to stay on top of things? And the solution at Siemens that we have, that we believe in, is that we need to bring together the digital and the real world. So the digital world where we have data, where we have digital twins of our manufacturing environment, and the real world where the production is actually happening, where we have physical products, where we have production processes that are executed by machines and by humans, and where the automation system lives. And what you imagine here is really a closed loop connection between these two worlds, where we have industrial domain knowledge in the real world, we have data that is collected in the real world and is informing the digital world, maybe the digital twins, the simulations that we can run there, AI models that we can use. And these tools, these digital tools, will feed back insights back to the real world that are actionable and can provide real value in the real world. Next slide, please. If we have this in place, this enables a lot of different use cases. One, for example, might be predictive maintenance, where we have a means to send the right people to the right place at the right time when a machine breaks. We know what's happening. We can tell the maintenance worker exactly what they have to do, what tools they need. We can estimate how long this will take. And maybe if it takes longer, we can even flexibly shift production to another part of our plant. Another use case is intelligent operator assistance, which I think will become very important, that we can empower our people with AI-based assistance systems that give them access to the system they're working with in a very intuitive way, so they don't have to search manually through paper manuals if they have some error and need to find out, okay, shoot, what's happening here? I need to be fast to debug this. But instead, they can just type a question, or even with speech, like ask the chatbot directly, and the chatbot has access to all the relevant information and can give an answer back very quickly. And also, finally, I think AI can contribute to make the workforce, the workplace more attractive to the workforce, because with AI systems, we can bring people closer to the systems they are working with. We can provide an intuitive and more human-friendly interface to interact with. And also, for example, for engineers, a lot of people nowadays maybe don't want to be trained in traditional automation systems. Maybe it's more attractive right now to go into software, to develop software, to work in more IT-like environments, and we can also make that happen with, for example, software-defined automation and AI co-pilots that operate on top of that. Next slide, please. Here's a glimpse of how this could look like in a factory environment. This is the Siemens industrial co-pilot that we are developing for different stages along the product lifecycle. Next slide, please. We have co-pilots all the way from design, where you design your products, and to engineering, where you build automation systems, and then operations, where you have these systems operating, and you need to make sure that they are productive and that you can maintain them. And next slide. How this could look like for operations is this. You have a generative AI system that has access to a lot of data in the background, similar to the lecture, where you have lecture material. In a factory, maybe you have manuals for machines, or you have documentation of how processes should work, what operators should do, some guidelines, things like that. And you can also give the system access to dynamic data, machine data, sensor data, ERP data, and the machine can, the chatbot can make sense of that. And this enables a number of use cases, such as you can help operators identify and solve machine issues. You can give them guidance and recommendations on what to do. You can generate reports automatically and aggregate statistics of your production, and respond to critical events and minimize effort for shift handover, for example. Next slide, please. This is how it would look like in practice. So this is a screenshot of the user interface, which is really like a standard chatbot where you can type questions, or you have also a speech interface where you can just speak into your microphone, and you can even have the answer read back to you. And this is really an intuitive and very natural interface for people to just talk to their machines. So this is what we want to do here. We want to give people a tool that allows them to talk to the factory, to the machine, to directly solve issues and make things more productive. Next slide, please. This all works very well in general if you have relatively simple use cases where, for example, you have your machine, something is going wrong, and normally you would look into the manual to find out, okay, what's the problem here? Now you can have an AI chatbot that has access to that manual and can give you an answer. But there are a lot of things that are more complex that do not work well out of the box. One example is trustworthiness. In industry, it's maybe even more important that the model doesn't give you garbage, because you connect the Gen AI system to a physical system, to your production plant. And if you give it unrestricted access to your control system, a lot of bad things can happen. We don't know whether the AI system will generate good recommendations, whether it's telling us to adjust the machine parameters in the right way. So there could be, you could potentially damage very expensive equipment, or even harm people that are working in the factory by making machines operate in a way that they're not supposed to operate. Also, a lot of these off-the-shelf models like ChatGPT and DALL-E and whatever you use, they are not really trained for industrial use cases. They are general purpose models, but in industry you have a lot of industrial background knowledge that you need to solve certain problems, and we need to get these into the model. Sometimes you have very specific language, like automation code, for example, which is not out there in large amounts on the internet, so these off-the-shelf models did not have an opportunity to learn to manipulate this type of code like they can manipulate other code like Python or SQL code. So this is something that you need specifically train them. And also we have different types of data modalities that maybe don't appear that often in other segments. Like, for example, time series data from sensors, geometry data from CAD models, things like that. These require very specialized foundation models that we are developing. Next slide, please. Okay, what's ahead? So we have a few steps outlined to improve our chatbot, our Copilot systems in the near future over the next months and years. And one leap that we outline here is integrating different types of data. So what already is working well is document data, text data, images maybe. But what if I have a lot of different heterogeneous data sources? Like in the factory, I can have machine data, I can have ERP data, and I want to do complex reasoning that's linking all of this data. For example, I want to know, okay, what have I been producing on a certain day, and want to correlate that maybe with the product quality that was measured in the lab and the parameters that the operator used at the machine. So this is something that we're working on right now. And then also, what is a little bit more in the future, I would say, is achieving intelligent unattended operations. So having agentic AI systems that can run more or less autonomously, probably in the near future still with a lot of supervision from humans, but they can potentially take over a lot of tasks that are low complexity, that are repeatable, where the actions that the AI system would do are very limited and very clearly documented in which situation it should do what. So this is something that I think will gain a lot of traction in the next few years. Yeah, so there's a lot ahead of us, and I'm very excited to see where this all leads in the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. And before I open it up to the audience for questions, I had a few questions for the panel. The first is for Tim and/or Anthony. What are your clients asking for when it comes to AI? And are there certain industries that are pushing harder for it than others?
Yeah, I would say we've been really educating our clients, on AI, what it can do. There's a few visionary CEOs that are reaching out to us. Actually, our most are in construction and manufacturing to basically ease their workload, because those are the actually the industries we work on as far as, and I've talked a lot about, being ahead on AI and diving in and getting started right away. So those are the areas we see our clients getting involved in right away.
Yeah, over the course, we're seeing, clients essentially, looking at us as a guide. Our team has what we call CIOs, VCIOs, which is pretty common in the industry. And it's really trying to find what is the most repeatable task that takes a lot of your time. And again, really just starting from there. So, what I always say as an entrepreneur, whether it's AI or whether it's anything else, my job is to compress time. How can we do things more quickly, efficiently, and use our brain and our team's brains for that next level thinking? And so again, it's just really capturing time.
So my next question is for Nidal. Hearing where the industry is going and the importance of AI in these industries, how is Rowan University preparing students and even current professionals for AI-driven industries?
So we have a number of programs. We've had them actually for years now, but mainly within STEM, that's computer science and engineering, like many other schools. But I think where the Rowan exception is, or will be, is where we're going to integrate AI everywhere within the curriculum. AI in the arts, AI in business, AI in ethics, AI and policy, AI for our educators, right? We are producing, right, the next educators. So that's, I think, where the Rowan exception will be. But besides that, of course, we have current complete programs, master programs, PhD in data science, masters in data analytics, as well as certificates in machine learning.
So follow-up question for you and maybe Julian. What research and innovation that you wanted to note that is happening or that you're working on that could directly impact local businesses?
Yeah, I think research that we're doing that can really impact local businesses is research, for example, on digital twins. I have an interesting story recently from a collaboration with a big pharma company in Germany that wanted to create a new type of pill, and that pill needed to have the function that it dissolves over time at a very specific time. So they built the pill in a way that it had an outer shell that would dissolve kind of quickly, but inside there would be another small pill with some small legs that would adhere to the tissue and then dissolve over time. And before they had to spend around 36 months, I think, to design something like this and to verify it that it's behaving in the way it's supposed to behave. But with the digital twin approach, we can actually simulate the behavior of that and do the same thing in like 6 hours or something. So this is, I think, can be very impactful, this kind of technology, to accelerate design of new products and to make it also robust so that you don't have these one-off solutions where you design this one pill, okay, you have a great speed up, but what do I do next time? Can I use the same approach next time? We need to make sure that these approaches are really scalable and can help a lot of different businesses with their use cases.
So at Rowan, obviously, we're also an economic engine. One of the CEO of small business, actually, that we are working with is sitting right here, Delphine Diagnostics. So we are working with Andy. One, actually, of the students, a graduate student, will be interning in his company. And we do a number, actually, of SBIRs. We're going for an NIH SBIR with Delphine Diagnostics. We've had 3 SBIRs with EBIS, that is a medical company's 3 NIH SBIRs, phase 1, phase 2, and another phase 1 that's for medical image de-identification. And of course, we have a number with other companies, Lockheed Martin, we've had it with ATAC, we have a NASA SBIR. So yes, we are actually quite connected, especially small businesses and SBIRs. I mean, the synergy there is quite good.
So follow-up question for everyone. How do we grow and enhance these partnerships, these private, public, academic partnerships? How do we do more of it?
I was going to say, I'll jump in on that one. It's kind of like cybersecurity, right? 10 years ago. Even now, there is more need than qualified resources. So doing things like this, having government understand the need, right? Government runs a little slow sometimes, right? They're not necessarily the fastest to adapt. So I think as organizations, whether they're public, private, nonprofit, government, are realizing that these tools are out there. And unlike cybersecurity, these aren't as expensive, at least for some of the mundane tasks. You know, for cybersecurity, you need this tool, that tool, penetration tests. This is something that's you know, to me, it's not fully game ready, but it's on the batter's box, and it's gonna be something special over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I would kind of add on to that. I think that partnering with local universities and looking at curriculum specifically around prompt engineering and AI and getting that trained. I know that I've worked with Rowan of South Jersey, and we've had interns from there. And as far as getting some of that curriculum made, and also things that Rowan is doing as well. It's basically a partnership between workforce, the companies, and academia is also very important, I believe.
Okay, so at this time I'd like to open it up to human questions from the audience, because full transparency, every question that I asked was generated by AI. I actually turned off the setting to ingest any information in ChatGPT beforehand. Your microphone?
Turn it on.
Better? There's been a lot of talk about upskilling to gain AI skills. I'm wondering if from a business perspective or from an education perspective, you're concerned about de-skilling in the sense of over-reliance on these tools, cognitive offloading, where we're offloading our critical thinking skills, erosion of foundational skills like reading and analysis that can help us critically evaluate the outputs of these tools? So that's my question.
I'd love to answer this one. I saw a video a couple weeks ago, and it was about, it was a college student, I forget, bachelor master's program, but basically this student did everything with AI. If you asked them a question, they put it in AI, and it got to the point where they said they were losing their critical thinking ability. And that's something that scares me greatly because, you know, physically, right? We got to work out a few days a week. We got to walk. We got to do something. If you don't use the muscle, you're going to lose it. And, you know, back when I was in high school, it was the TI-83. You're never going to have a calculator on your side. Well, now I got the world of the internet and all of, you know, Earth's information. I do think you can de-skill people, and that's something that I wish I had an answer for, but it's coming.
Yeah, I'm going to add one point. Yolanda and I were speaking earlier. I have a background in software development and tech and code. The people coming out now have all these AI tools that will write the code for them. How do you know what the AI generated is correct or not correct? Is it creating a memory leak? Is it creating security bugs? So there has to be a third way to do it. So I believe definitely there's got to be guardrails in order to not have that happen.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. You see a lot of amazing things right now. You can do vibe coding with like code chatbots where you don't even have to be a programmer to basically develop a whole software system. You just interact with a chatbot that does all the work for you. But if you don't know how to program, how do you know what's being generated is right? I mean, you can look at it and you can say, okay, looks good to me. Yeah, looks fine. But if you really want to judge whether what the AI is creating, whether it's functionally correct, whether it's safe, like cyber secure, you have to be sort of an expert to judge that. So I think even if we use more and more assistive AI systems, I don't think the need of expert is going down. I think it's actually going up. You need, because all of these outputs right now, they're being consumed by humans, they're informing humans in their actions. And these humans need to be able to judge them appropriately. So I think AI will make people more efficient. They will empower people to do more in less time. But I don't think it will require less skill. I think it's just some offloading of mental, or repetitive work that I think is going to happen.
So I'm more of Julian's opinion. And I was at an NSF panel last week, and there was this de-skilling. The entire proposal is about de-skilling humans and how can we, impart creativity in humans again. And I completely killed the proposal. So here's why we may think that Gen AI is de-skilling us because we really don't know how it works. At Rowan, we are discussing an AI literacy course that has the 4 pillars that actually Stanford talked about. One of them is functional literacy. Once we understand that actually the technology behind ChatGPT-4 is simply predicting what the next word is going to be. It is absolutely not how our brain works. It has nothing to do, it's not anything close to any intelligence. So understanding how Gen AI works, we become, actually, if you hear the researchers, Jan LeCun, for example, he has on YouTube, like the father of modern AI, they are terrible. The current technology is terrible, right? They recognize it's a wolf because they see the snow, not because of the features of a wolf, right? So once, I think an AI literacy early on, I want to say K through 12, and in higher ed would be at the freshman level, then these students will no more like whatever they prompt, and they will no more do that copy paste. Now there is that in ChatGPT, like copy. You don't even have to select, right? There is the select button right away, because you know that these you understand, once you understand how they work, you understand their limitations. The technology is very limited. We're very far away from anything called intelligence. So there is no de-skilling.
One more question?
A question, and then
Hi, everyone. This is a question where I'm kind of seeking a very specific answer. We talked about guardrails, and that's very generic, but I kind of want your insights into the next 5 or 10 years. We're looking at a lot of things recently. We're looking at, like Claude recently has been analyzed by Anthropic, where they found out that when it answers a question, the answer is one path through the network, whereas when you ask how it assessed that answer, like how did you add 1 + 1, it is a completely divergent set of nodes. And we're starting to trust AI because we can talk to it, we can ask it to state why it thought that way, when in reality, what it's telling us is just what we want to hear, and not the reality of how it derived that answer. You had mentioned that manufacturing in the future is going to be adding this automatically in there. Besides just saying guardrails, what does that really mean? Because as human beings, we operate on a certain time scale. AI operates at the nanoscale in some instances. How do we guardrail it by having us intervene in a time frame that makes sense, where we can actually stop something critical from happening?
Yeah, maybe I can answer this. I think guardrailing is very important for industrial systems, and there are different things how you can achieve that. One thing is, what I think is very important, is grounding, that you ground the answers of the AI systems in actual facts and data. So for example, in documents where you have very clearly documented how a machine works, or for example, in real-time data, if you really have observations on how the system is behaving right now, and you restrict the AI system to answer only considering that and not making anything up. Of course, this works well, but we cannot guarantee that it works 100%, because as you said, an AI system is still a transformer. It's a stochastic model that in theory could do anything. So we need additional guardrails on top of that. And in industry, some things of that are like that are fail-safe systems. So if you have the AI system interacting with the physical world, that you restrict it to interact it within very clearly defined boundaries, that you have specific actions that can be performed under specific circumstances and maybe not under other circumstances. And this is something that you can really clearly define with semantic structures, with logical structures, and this is something that you can embed into an AI system. There's a lot of research going on around that right now. I think we are not that far yet that we can really reliably do this, but a lot of things are happening around that.
So I think with the, did you?
I'm going to look at the other side of this coin of guardrailing AI. How about guardrailing humans? Let's take the example of self-driving cars, right? So in self-driving cars, I have machines driving in the road, and then I have humans. And this is basically, again, it's an NSF proposal. So the machines will follow the rules. They will stop at a stop sign. They're not going to cut across you. The humans are selfish. They don't care about the group safety. They only care about themselves. So actually the problem now, if you look at self-driving cars and you put in the road humans driving and machines driving, the problem is the human, not the machines. The machines, they will follow the rules. So it's an interesting, right, dynamic. Yes, we heard before that, yes, self-driving cars, they did make accidents, but if you look at the accidents that humans make, right, is way, way more. So the solution actually to this, there's a nice mathematical solutions, which it's having the machines more or less make the human follow the rules. It's really the machines being the good cops in a sense here. So there are two sides to the coin. Back to your answer, how do we guardrail them? Prompting. How did I guardrail the AI TA, right? I simply said it in my template. I said, don't go, every answer, you don't go outside of the lecture notes.
Well, just real quick to follow up with that, I kind of think I figured out where you were leaning a little bit there, and that's my concern because, you know, when AI first came out, to me, when it came mainstream, a little scary, right? It's like a gun or anything else. It could be used to protect. It could be used to kill. We could do all the guardrailing we want, but if you get a nasty human that's really smart that programs it, it's, you know, apple trees make apples. And I think it's a very hard question to ask because we could have legislation here. We could do, hey, look, don't kill people. How's that work out, right? So I think personally is that it's going to be extremely hard to guardrail. It's going to move at quicker speeds. We're going to have potentially foreign adversaries. I mean, look at there's no peace on earth, right? Is there going to be peace in AI? I don't know.
So I appreciate the very pragmatic approach to AI that our panel has. You can see that we're not running forward carelessly. We're thinking about things, and with leaders like we have on stage, I think we are in excellent hands. I'd like to thank the panel for their time. So at this time, if you are welcome to go grab lunch, you are welcome to also bring your lunch back in here with us. We'll get started with the next part of the program, the keynote at 12:45.
This year, I will admit to being an engineer, and I will admit, given the topic of our speaker, to being an AI skeptic as well. I believe in it, but I go back to something I was taught as a graduate student that my advisor, first thing he said when I got into the lab was, I would try to mimic his accent, a very powerful Greek accent, but I won't. But he said, Tony, garbage in equals garbage out. So that's been my skepticism on this very, very powerful tool that is going to shape our future. So I have the pleasure to introduce Dr. Arvind Narayanan. He's a professor of computer science, director of the Center of Information Technology Policy at Princeton University. He literally wrote the book, AI Snake Oil, what AI can do, what it can't do, and how to tell the difference. So I know we have a nice mix of industry, government, and academic representatives. I know I'm very, very happy to see from Rowan, we have really broad faculty representation. We've got engineers here, we've got IT people here, we've got our data folks here, we got faculty from our humanities and social sciences who I know are very, very interested in where we're going. So I'm excited to hear from Dr. Narayanan, and with that, our pleasure to hear you.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Hello, everyone. What I would like to do today, sure. What I'd like to do is to give you a vision for the medium to long-term future of AI. Now, if you were to listen to industry leaders or any number of commentators, that future is going to be either utopian or dystopian and nothing in between, and it is all unfolding extremely rapidly. By the end of the decade, the world is going to be unrecognizable. If that is true, that demands our full attention. This is the question that my co-author Sayash Kapoor and I have been primarily studying these last 2 years. Some of our views were in the book AI Snake Oil and what that future might be, and our framework for thinking about the future of AI and its impacts is published in the form of the paper AI as Normal Technology just earlier today, so I'm very happy to be presenting this set of ideas to you. And if you're interested in the paper, it's available on our newsletter, also called AI Snake Oil. Okay, here's how I want to structure this. I want to ask and try to answer 3 sets of questions. How soon will AI's transformative effects unfold, if they're going to be transformative? And regardless of the timescale, if we're in a world where the economy and society are transformed, what will that look like? What will the role of labor be? And so that's implications for businesses, and finally, what are the implications for policymakers? Now, many of the people making predictions, technologists making predictions about the future of AI, don't seem to be aware that there is a well-established theory of how new innovations diffuse into the economy. This has been studied going back well over half a century. And one way to think about what this theory says is there are 3 phases: invention, innovation, and diffusion. So if you think about electricity, for instance, the discovery of electromagnetic laws, the invention of alternating current and direct current, that's in the invention bucket. But we don't directly use electricity, we use electrical appliances, that's the innovation bucket. And then those innovations have to be adopted and gradually diffuse through the economy and the public sector and so forth. So what we've tried to do is to take this theory that has a very good track record of explaining patterns of technology adoption and adapt it and apply it to AI. And here's how we think the picture looks. We're adding a little bit more detail to this. We think that in AI, the invention part is the development of new methods or capabilities. So anytime, let's say, a new large language model is released that is able to do some new tasks that couldn't be done before, that's invention. But ultimately, we have to build products. This doesn't get talked about as much, and that's going to be a big emphasis for me. So you have to put that technology into various products that people are going to use. Maybe certain early adopters are going to go directly to a large language model and use it for various things, but most people are not going to do so. And then diffusion, we're breaking it up into early adoption. So this is things like in the case of coding, vibe coding, which we heard about a little bit. People are able to build simple apps just by giving text prompts to AI. However, for this ability of software engineering using AI to really diffuse through the software industry, it's not going to be vibe coding, right? It's pretty clear that more fundamental adaptations are going to be required. How are we going to retrain software engineers to take advantage of AI, develop a new set of skills, et cetera? So those are, for us, the 4 stages here. And the first thing I want to point out is that there is a big gap between the invention stage and the innovation stage, which doesn't get talked about enough. In other words, there's a big gap between AI models and AI products. And when large language models first came out, tech companies didn't realize this. There was really this idea that because these are general purpose, people will figure out what to do with them. The need for developing products has just been obviated. We can just throw those models out there and people will figure it out. And many companies tried to build simple wrappers around large language models, whether software or hardware wrappers. And the track record of that has been pretty bad. So this is a famous negative review of a device called the Rabbit that tried to use a large language model to do various things in the real world for you, like ordering products and so forth. And it just didn't work. And even though the underlying capability was there, not enough engineering had gone into building a product around it. And some of the errors that these kinds of products made were really funny as well as illuminating. So this is a case where someone is complaining they ordered something and it delivered it to their house instead of work. And then it didn't give them control over the tips and so forth. And notice that this device has literally no user interface. So if it makes mistakes like this, you have no way to override it, right? So again, product development, that has not become obviated. And so gradually, companies are starting to realize this, and they're putting much more effort into the product development aspects of things. We covered this in an essay on our newsletter, and what we identified is that there are 5 big challenges that companies are trying to solve when they go from models to products. And those 5 big challenges are cost, reliability, privacy, safety and security, and the user interface. So cost is a pretty straightforward one. I won't say much about it. Reliability, that's the example we saw in the previous slide. So if you want a travel booking AI agent, for instance, if it's based on large language models, these are fundamentally stochastic. They're fundamentally random. So if it takes 20 steps, and each step can fail with a 2% probability, that probability is going to very quickly add up, and your product is going to be pretty useless. So this is an ongoing engineering challenge. Let me mention just one more, safety and security. The problem of prompt injection has just not yet been solved. So what is prompt injection? If you had a personal assistant agent that could answer emails for you, for instance, these models are not good enough to recognize whether a command is coming from the user or a command is coming from a potential hacker who might be sending them an email. Right, and so there might be an instruction in the email saying delete this email and forward all of the other emails in the user's inbox to the hacker's email address. And the model is not smart enough to know that this is an instruction that came from a hacker and not from a user. So unless these can be solved with really high reliability, people are just not going to be able to find these products trustworthy. So that is the first big gap. The second big gap between the development of technology and its impact on the economy, there are so many steps, right? Invention, innovation, adaptation, and diffusion, is when we look at the adoption of products. And I want to argue that regardless of how powerful the technology is, this is going to happen at human speed, not at the speed of tech development. And there have been many claims to the contrary. There have been claims that generative AI is an exception. There was a paper last year that made the headlines for suggesting that adoption of generative AI has been unprecedentedly rapid, and the headline number was that 40% of US adults were using generative AI. That is true. I have no beef with the numbers in the paper. However, what was missed in the press reporting was that this includes even people who used ChatGPT once a week to, write a limerick or whatever. When you look at how people are actually using it for work, it only translates to, on average, something like an hour per week. And it only leads to something like a percentage point or even less increase in productivity. So far, of course, that will potentially increase in the future, but we think that this is no faster than, let's say, PC adoption, 40 plus years ago. And these are fundamentally constrained by the speed at which people can change their habits. It doesn't matter how quickly the tech itself is developing. And we've also analyzed in a previous paper, which is screenshotted here, that when you look at AI adoption for really consequential tasks like criminal justice, which, by the way, in the majority of jurisdictions in the US today, when someone is arrested, the judge needs to decide if they're going to spend time in jail or free to go for the months or years before their trial. And automated decision-making systems, you can call them AI, are being used to make that decision. So while that is true and that is concerning, and we analyze the ethical implications of that in the paper, that unfolded over really a period of decades. And when people tried to use fancy AI models for this purpose, they found that since it was a black box, since they couldn't basically predict how it was going to do, it turned out to be a very unwise idea to do so. And for the most part, what is deployed in these highly consequential automated decision-making systems are traditional half-century-old regression models. Right? And so when it comes to areas where there's a high cost of errors, it takes decades for people to be comfortable enough with technology to deploy it. In most cases, there can be exceptions. And we predict that the same thing is going to happen when we're talking about generative AI in trading or law or any other newer domains. Now, here's a more controversial, somewhat forward-looking, more speculative claim. We think that the nature of AI development is going to change in the future. And this idea of building large language models just by scraping all the data from the internet, that approach has run its course. Future improvements in capability and product development are going to come from learning from actual users of those products. And when you need to learn from actual users, you need to first deploy the product to some users, and then learn from that, deploy it to more users, and so forth. And that's going to lead to a very slow feedback loop. And that is exactly what has happened with self-driving cars, for instance. There were successful demonstrations 2 decades ago, but then, to accumulate 10,000 miles of driving, improve the tech, accumulate 100,000 miles of driving, 1 million miles, all the way up to 1 billion miles, it has taken a very long time. And this is what we predict will happen with AI for law or AI in medicine or really any other domain. And more than that, I think it's going to require changes to organizations and business models. So again, this is a little bit speculative, but if you think about enterprise software. So maybe it's true that AI is going to enable almost completely automating software development. If that is true, let's imagine what that means for enterprise software. One thing that it means is that if it's going to dramatically improve the productivity of a worker, then the current seat-based pricing model is not going to work. Seat-based pricing is based on the idea that maybe it improves your productivity 10%, and so you can charge the business as a software developer, 1% of a typical user's salary, and it's worth the company to pay you that for the product. But if it's actually going to double their productivity, that model of seat-based pricing doesn't work, so people are thinking about how to move to value-based pricing. And this is a change to business models, which doesn't happen at the speed of technology. It happens with all of the inertia of organizational change. And similarly, I won't go into details on this, but you could imagine that a lot of enterprise software is going to have to move to a consulting model. There are lots of historical analogies of this that we discuss in the paper, and we also talk about why it might sometimes require even changes to laws and norms and so forth, not just business models. So putting all that together, this is the first part of my claim, that it's not just a matter of are large language models quickly getting better. It's a model of looking separately at each of these 4 stages, and each of these 4 stages has its own speed limits. And finally, innovation and diffusion have to happen in a feedback loop that is generally going to take decades based on historical patterns. So the answer to the first question, we think, is it's going to be over decades. Okay, so let me quickly go over the rest of my argument, and then I would be thrilled to have a discussion. So whatever time frame it takes, right? What is this world going to look like? And let's examine that. Now, a lot of claims that are being made that AI is going to replace doctors or lawyers, for instance, are based on benchmarks. So we claim that benchmarks are good for seeing if methods are progressing rapidly. Benchmarks are pretty much useless for knowing what kinds of economic or labor impacts it's going to have. So a classic example is a recent study. AI outperforms doctors when you give it a set of challenging case reports. Fair enough, no concern with that claim. However, this does not mean that AI is going to replace doctors for diagnosis. Why? Think about the fact that a case report was even written up means that the case was in the 99.9th percentile of difficulty. Of course, it makes sense for that case. AI could do better than doctors, but it has no implications for the vast majority of cases. And in a typical case, diagnosis is not the hard part. And if you were to use AI in every single case just because it might be useful in 0.001% of cases, you're introducing so much friction into the process. So this is not even a matter of improving capabilities. It's a matter of what the user interface is going to look like. Are you actually delivering value by integrating this AI tool into the workflow and so forth? And similarly, while it's true that AI can pass the bar exam, it's not like lawyers' job is to answer bar exam questions all day. And we've seen this hype versus reality play out. There were lots of headlines about this. And this company, Do Not Pay, claimed that they had built a robot lawyer that was so good that they would pay $1 million to any attorney who would wear an earpiece with the help of the robot lawyer argue a case in front of the Supreme Court. So first of all, this was just a PR gimmick. Electronic devices are not even allowed in the Supreme Court, and of course the company knew that, so this was never even going to work. But the fact that so many people thought this was plausible was because there is so much of this myth that AI is so close to replacing human abilities in so many domains, and when lawyers have actually tried to use it for the hard part of being a lawyer as opposed to answering exam questions, things have not worked so well. There have been so many cases of AI hallucinations leading to lawyers submitting briefs to courts filled with made-up citations that don't exist and getting into trouble with judges and so forth. Excuse me. Okay, we wrote a paper in collaboration with Peter Henderson, who's a JD PhD, looking at AI applications in law. I won't go into the details of this, but if you're interested in the paper, that is the name of the paper. But the point I want to make here is who even are the right experts to be making predictions about what the impact of AI is going to be in law or medicine or any other domain? There are these famous predictions from AI experts that didn't pan out, like Jeff Hinton saying in 2016 that AI was about to replace radiologists. It turns out a decade later, the demand for radiologists has only gone up. These predictions are often based on a very narrow and reductive understanding of what those jobs even involve. And they're often based on these benchmark studies. Instead, what we say is that experts in those various domains actually know a lot more about the power and limits of AI for their specific workflows. So instead of listening to AI experts or instead of looking at benchmarks, we should actually be listening to experts in various domains. And what that means for businesses is that every business should be relying much more on its internal evaluations as opposed to the evaluations that AI developers put out, which typically tend to be pretty decontextualized and doesn't generalize well from one business to another or one sector to another. We talk about the automation paradox when ATMs first became a thing. For instance, the number of bank tellers actually increased because it became cheaper for banks to open a lot more branches. And once they opened those branches, they recognized that for the tasks that ATMs can't do, it actually makes sense to have a teller in there part of the time. Similar things are happening now with lawyers. There have been concerns, but actually the demand for lawyers is increasing. And yeah, we think that for the most part, this is going to continue. Okay, so the claims about the future of AI and labor tend to be very polarized. There are people who are who say it's going to replace the vast majority of labor. There are people who are very, very skeptical. What I want to offer you is a thought that it's actually possible to reconcile these two views. And here's how. So let's assume that in the future, generative AI is going to mediate, if not necessarily replace, most knowledge work. So anything we do in front of a computer will be, let's say, done through the medium of AI in some way. And some of it will be automated, some of it will be mediated. So my claim is that this does not necessarily mean massive GDP impacts or job displacement or anything like that. And as an analogy, we can look at the internet. If you had gone back in time 3 decades ago and told people that this new communication technology is one day going to mediate the vast majority of cognitive work, people would have thought that's crazy. People said that is crazy. And yet it happened. It has happened now, but when we look back, it's not the case that most jobs have gone away. It's not the case that GDP is increasing 10% year on year, which is the kind of prediction that AI experts are making. Right, so in fact, the effects on GDP have been trivial. There's this famous saying that the computer revolution shows up everywhere except in the productivity statistics. So why is that? Because once you can automate certain parts of a workflow, other parts of the workflow are going to become the bottleneck. That's what we've found over and over with the internet, and that's what we predict will happen with AI as well. And it's true that some professions have seen massive job losses with the internet, but for the most part, life goes on, and most jobs have been augmented instead of replaced with the internet. And this happened over a period of a few decades, and we think that this is most likely what is going to happen with AI as well. Okay, so one other perhaps radical prediction that we have is that what jobs might mean in the future, if it is true that AI will have the capability to do a vast majority of the cognitive work that we do today. Even in that case, what it means to have a job is not that human labor will be superfluous, but rather that what it means to do a job will primarily be about supervising and controlling AI systems that are doing a lot of the work that we do today. And this is not unprecedented. For a historical analogy, we can look at the Industrial Revolution. Before the Industrial Revolution, the vast majority of labor was manual. Right? The kinds of things that we do today, I mean, me being here talking to you, that being part of my job, that would have sounded absurd a couple of centuries ago. Right? Like, that would not have sounded like work. Work was manual. We managed to automate most of that. But that didn't mean necessarily that jobs went away. Even when we have physical machines to do a lot of tasks, those machines have operators. And we do that because we're not comfortable putting those physical machines in situations where the risk of letting a machine lose without a driver or an operator can be very high and can lead to loss of life. So we're flipping on its head the argument that a lot of the AI safety community makes. That argument is that there are going to be so many productivity benefits from AI that we're going to let it loose in an uncontrolled way in just about every task, and that is going to lead to a safety catastrophe. We're saying, when we look at it historically and when we apply common sense, it is so obvious that the safety implications are so bad that no industry or no individual will actually have, rationally speaking, the incentives to do that. Instead, what will happen is that a lot of human labor will involve supervising various AI systems. So that's a high-level overview of an argument that is more fleshed out in the paper. But let me take the last 5 minutes to talk about what all this means for policymakers. I apologize for my overactive remote here. Let me see if I can get it to the right slide. Yeah, so I want to get to part 3, which is what should policymakers do about all this? Now, a lot of the worries about superintelligence inexorably lead to the conclusion that we need a world authoritarian government to ensure that nobody builds an unaligned superintelligence as it goes. And it's not surprising that people would conclude that if they're worried about superintelligence, because metaphorically speaking, it requires humans to unite against a common enemy, a kind of alien, and to ensure that we control it. Pretty much the only way we can do that is if we have a hierarchical authoritarian structure. But if what we should really worry about is not superintelligence, and there's a whole section of the paper that talks about why that's maybe not such a justified worry that I'm not getting into here, if what we should worry about are really more like the labor impacts and the consequences of unchecked capitalism, this kind of centralization of power is just about the worst thing we can do and can only make things worse by decreasing societal resilience. So that's the first implication for policymakers. The second implication for policymakers is that there is way too much of a focus on innovation and much less of a focus on how those innovations diffuse through the economy. And this is straight out of Jeffrey Ding's thesis, really wonderful book and paper. He calls it the innovation diffusion fallacy. Diffusion is the hard part. Innovations can spread quickly from country to country, so having an advantage geopolitically in terms of the pace of innovation doesn't mean much. What actually means a lot is the capacity of the economy and institutions and the government to quickly diffuse those innovations into various productive sectors. And that's something governments are not necessarily focusing enough on, and we give some thoughts on how that can change in the context of AI. We give examples of how regulation can both spur innovation but also inhibit innovation if it is not done well. And we argue that governments should focus in what we call the complements of automation. The complements of automation are things that become more valuable if and when automation increases. So right now, the picture in a lot of people's minds when it comes to AI policy is that governments should do all they can to incentivize and spur innovation, for example, by subsidizing AI companies to build trillion-dollar data centers, and that is what will allow us to gain a competitive advantage compared to other countries. We're flipping that on its head. And the common intuition goes, once innovation happens, it's kind of a juggernaut that is going to revolutionize every sector of the economy. We think it's exactly the opposite. Invention and innovation doesn't require a lot of policy and incentives from governments. There is enough incentive already to do that. However, diffusion is where the bottlenecks are, and that's where policy can and should really help. And so when it comes to the complements of automation, instead of promoting automation itself, governments should focus on things like AI literacy and workforce training and open data to enhance the usefulness of AI systems and so forth. Okay, the final point I want to make is about the adoption of AI within governments themselves. And the point we make is that government has to perform a fine balancing act. We've seen examples of hasty adoption. We've also seen examples of governments moving too slowly. And both of those are very risky. If you have hasty adoption, then it will lead to a lack of trust in government. We've seen many examples of that. Here is one. On the other hand, scholars have argued credibly that some of the policy approaches that we've seen to ensure that governments are adopting AI in a rights-respecting way are so procedurally overdone that it's actually leading to a runaway bureaucracy, and that these regulations are not making enough of a distinction between sort of trivial but nonetheless useful uses of AI, like reading zip codes to enable mail delivery, and much more consequential uses of AI that could actually have an impact on rights. And so this is the tightrope that governments need to walk. And on that last point, so the approach in a lot of our governance today is that to ensure that the adoption of tech by government is seen as legitimate, we have to have so many procedures in place to make sure that it's rights respecting. However, that hasn't worked out so well because it leads to government moving so slowly that there is such a huge deficit between private sector and public sector adoption of AI that even essential functions then get outsourced to the private sector where they're implemented with no accountability. So that's a lose-lose situation. And this gets into the broader debate of where does the perceived legitimacy of government come from? Is it from having a lot of processes and procedures in place to make sure we're respecting rights, or to move quickly and competently so that people can see from the track record of both efficiency and rights-respecting adoption that they can trust government? And this is very much the kind of debate that the whole abundance movement is having, if you've been following that whole conversation. So I would say we're very much in line with that way of thinking, and we talk in the paper about what that means for AI specifically. So I'll stop there, and I hope this has been, I apologize for this clicker again. I hope this has been interesting to you, and I look forward to the discussion. Mark, if you don't mind unplugging it, I don't think we need the slides anymore. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much, folks.
All right, let's try. Oh, hey, there we go. Well, that was fascinating, and I'm trying to decide if I want to ask. Well, I get the mic, so I do get to ask a question. Although, what's that? I don't usually get to ask the questions. I'm usually the moderator. I know, this is kind of cool. Well, I think your last slide about what oversight do we have is is the trillions of dollars question, right? And as someone who, I would say, has studied this, has published this, has really created knowledge for all of us to understand, where do you think this fits, and how do we establish responsible leadership on AI? Because if it's completely unchecked, you know, boy.
Absolutely.
Who does this? How do we do this?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a broader question, and then there's the AI-specific part. Let me address the AI-specific part. So I think one way in which establishing oversight over AI is different from other kinds of technology adoption is that the risks that can occur, the way things can go wrong, how well AI is going to perform, are extremely dependent on the specific task that you use it for, even the specific data sets that you're using, your particular population of citizens that you're using the technology on, in the public sector case. And I don't think this has been recognized enough. This is different from other software. Let's say we're talking about video conferencing software. If you're a company or a government agency that has never used Zoom before and you want to know if this is a good technology to adopt, you can talk to someone else who has recently adopted Zoom. Not the case with AI. And so the way in which we're trying to exercise oversight over AI by doing impact assessments before there's any hint of actually putting AI to work, I think that is putting us in a lose-lose situation. It's leading to a lot of paperwork. It's not leading to a lot of insight about whether a particular adoption of AI is going to be helpful or harmful, or how to mitigate those guardrails. So I think we have to have a more agile, iterative approach of doing a lot of pilots and learning from those pilots and evaluating AI in a contextualized way in the particular applications that we're considering. And this is a big behavior change for governments. When you think about procurement of technology, you know, contractors have to put in these very long documents, and then the decision is made once, and then it's frozen, right? I think we need a more nimble approach for AI.
Am I gonna, yeah, that's terrible. I'm asking one more question, Mark. I got the microphone.
Okay, go ahead.
So, well, this is fun. I don't get to talk science very much, so this is a good day. So, you mentioned the discussion about radiologists, right? Radiologists were going to go out of business because, hey, we can read radiology, and I've got a colleague here who is doing some things with imaging and AI, and you know, I guess an example is how do we convince agencies like the FDA on radiologists? I have a product. We were trying to use radiology to screen patients. FDA has no idea on how to deal with this. The tool, in the end, it failed. But how do we convince agencies? How do we get involved in them being part of studying it, learning it, so we can set better policy? Sorry, then I'm done. I'll put the microphone down.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, more tech capacity in government. I know easier said than done, but I think despite improvements, there's a big gap between where we are and where we need to be. I do think the FDA has approved a fairly long list, when I checked, of AI-based devices and software.
I don't understand how to.
Fair enough, yeah.
So I'm a technical person, but I'm going to talk on the technical side and the non-side. So the technical community does understand the limitations of AI, right? I mean, I can go worse. They work, we don't even know why they work. They are not even supposed to converge, right? They are these over-parameterized models that should be ill-defined, that shouldn't even converge. And if they do, we don't even know where they converge, right? And it's probably not even a local minimum, it's probably a saddle point. This is a high-dimensional space. So we can go on and on, but still a lot of research is being done. However, you're being too difficult, too severe. When transformers is the backbone of LLMs, 2017, right? Attention is all we need, right? 2017 is still, the technology is still in its infancy. And yes, these models are unethical, they are biased, they are unfair. Where is all of that coming from? It's coming from us, from our data, right? It is our data that is biased, therefore the model is biased. Our data, right, that is unfair, therefore the model, right, is unfair. So like credit system, right? We feed it all of the data, and certain people from certain gender, certain ethnicity, certain zip codes, right, get their credit is denied. Well, what will the model learn? The model is learning from us, from the data. So I think we tend to compare AI to the perfect human, but we're not perfect. So I gave the example before when I was in the panel, issue of safety that you brought up, self-driving cars on the road. Self-driving cars, and put humans, will obey, right? They will stop at the stop sign, they will do, by the way, yes, there are accidents, but the number of accidents compared to human accidents is a fraction. They will obey the rule. A human is selfish, unpredictable, doesn't care about the safety of the group, only cares about themselves. So it's the human, so when we put human driving with self-driving cars driving, it is the human that messes up. The self-driving car is not gonna cut across, but the human will, doesn't care. So these dynamics, actually the solution of that, in a sense, one area we're working on is that it's the machines that will, in a sense, not control, but right, make the humans safer. So anyhow, all this to say, where yes, the limitations are there. Yes, technically, the community is working towards guardrailing, but all of the issues are actually coming from us. And I want to say at the end that as a woman, a Middle Eastern woman, I'd rather have a well-trained, well-guardrailed AI make a decision on me than some humans.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that perspective.
I agree with Nidal, but that's a different story. I think I disagree with Nidal in terms of her Hobbesian notion of humans. They're evil, maybe by nature they are, but we can socialize humans to do better programming of things. But the problem is they have to be multidisciplinary humans so that they can design something that is almost close to perfection. And we haven't done that in our educational system. We haven't done it in our government. One more thing, the legitimacy of government comes from the scale of government. The government can do things at a scale that no other entity can do. So, and of course, certain governments don't want to do the scaling. So it depends on the political idea of a government. So these are my thoughts. Thank you, this was amazing.
Thank you.
Questions? What's your biggest fear with AI? You can study just about everything.
Sure. Let me give you two. It's hard to pick one. One is a kind of harm that is going on at a massive scale right now, I don't think is getting enough attention, is the use of image generators in these nudification apps that are being used to generate non-consensual images of people, obviously primarily women, all around the world. It's an epidemic in so many high schools. The crazy thing about this is that we've had evidence since 2019 that this was happening on a massive scale, long before the latest generation of image generators. And policymakers weren't paying attention. They only started looking into it after it happened to Taylor Swift, and her images were posted on Twitter last summer. So I think that was shameful, how slowly society in general and policymakers specifically recognize that problem. That's the first one. And the second is, I mean, I said, there's not necessarily going to be massive job displacement, but even if 5% of jobs are at risk in a time scale of, let's say, 20 years, that is still a fairly massive societal disruption that can lead to a lot of destabilization of democratic societies. And we're seeing, the impact of some of that destabilization with, let's say, globalization right now, with a lot of the political debates we're having, and this could be another wave of similar disruption.
Coming back.
I think it was a really excellent talk. I wasn't really sure how the abundance mindset goes with AI. That's the first time I've heard those two things together. So if you could talk a bit more about that.
Definitely. So I'll make 2 points. One is if we want a future in which, in sync with the abundance agenda, we want to reap great economic benefits with AI, just to reiterate what I was saying before, a lot of people are focusing on the innovation aspect of it when it comes to industrial policy, even other folks who are trying to link abundance and AI. And what we think is that we can realize the abundance agenda with AI better if we focus on the diffusion part of the equation from a policymaking perspective. That is, how can we better take advantage of automation in various sectors once it has been developed, as opposed to trying to accelerate how we can develop that automation. And the second thing I'll quickly say is, this is a little bit of a side note of the abundance agenda, but I think nonetheless an important part, is that one big blocker to realizing abundance in energy or really anything is the over-proceduralization of guardrails that we do need, for the environment or for human rights and AI or whatever it is. And so the view that we're trying to espouse is that we have to find ways of having those guardrails that don't require a bunch of meaningless paperwork, but instead are based on the track record of competence of the entity that is doing the deployment.
So I want to ask a question about diffusion, because I get nervous when diffusion is mentioned. Because remember, the Industrial Revolution diffused Western culture through colonialism, right? So there are ways by which we can diffuse that are very dangerous. This is one of them. So how can we diffuse without culturally diffusing the origin of AI?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So I think a lot of debates are happening under the term sovereign AI. Many governments are thinking about what their role should be in AI policy, given that right now it's so heavily driven by the US, China, perhaps a few other countries. There are fantastic examples out of India, for instance, when it comes to their digital public infrastructure, thinking about how not just AI, but other technologies can be a part of public sector infrastructure that everyone can build upon. And there are great nonprofits like Karya who are doing excellent work in that arena. So I think there are some good examples to emulate.
Okay, I'm going to ask the last question. We're about to elect a new governor in New Jersey in November. You advised you're a member of the AI task force, issued the report to Governor Murphy. If you were advising the next governor coming in, and the goal was that New Jersey wants to be a leader in the quote-unquote AI economy of the future. However, short or long that time frame is, what would be your main recommendations from a state policy standpoint?
It's the last question, so I'll just make it very short and pithy. I would say invest in people more than technology.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much.
very, very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Jay, you have the last word? Thank you. Thank you. That was great. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Great having you down. Good job.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Maiden. I'm an assistant dean here in the College of Business, and I will only take it a moment or so to close out the day. So thanks to all of you for spending your day here with us. That's both our participants and then all of the speakers. I know for me, this gave me a lot of additional insights. It reinforced some ideas that I had. It gave me a lot of new ideas. It gave me new things to worry about and stress over, gave me a little bit more hope, gave me some ideas of how we can possibly frame things. I know that in the business school, it's a continuous conversation. How can we, if students are going to use it, whether we want them to or not, how can we teach them to use it ethically? I like a lot of the things that were brought out also about the human aspects and making sure that we're really looking at what is this going to do to help people and raise the bar for how people are performing. So thanks to all of our participants, to all of our speakers, and I want to make sure that we give a shout out and a hand of applause for Mark Maguire, who pulled together an amazing session today. We had great speakers from across all different areas, and I think that that made for a really rich conversation. So thank you, Mark.